All right, welcome. This is Orion Rising. I'm your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into this show. Share this out, share this out, share this out. All right, it's Friday night. Law of One. I see some people in the chat there. You guys are talking. I can see it looks like a couple people came in just as a Facebook user, so I couldn't see that. But I know that one of them is Rebecca because she said hi and said hello to the Ancient Aliens Worldwide family, if anybody's here from that group. So I know that's Rebecca because she told me she was going to tune in and say hi. So welcome, Rebecca. I don't know who else is here, right? Unless you say hello, let me go back up in the chat here and see who said hi. Denise, I see that you're here. Welcome, right? I'm not sure who else is there because for some reason, 2 Facebook users, it looks like at least they're saying just Facebook user. So I apologize. I'm not sure exactly. I see that somebody is tagging Peter and Reese and Brooke. I'm not sure who that is because it just says Facebook user for some reason in this chat today. I'm not sure why. It's probably because of where I went live. Oh, let me take the screensaver down, right? We don't need that up so you guys can see me right here. Let's turn this off and put myself up into full screen here so we don't have to look at other stuff. Okay, it's Friday night, Law of One. Now we're finally, I got that back. Let me go back over here to the chat, right? Hi, Penny. Let's see who else is in there, right? I see, hello, Joanna. Yeah, for some reason, Facebook is coming through with everybody as Facebook user here. Not quite sure why the chat is tripping today, but it seems to be doing that, right? Not sure what's going on there. So I apologize if I don't know, because for some reason it's just saying Facebook user for everybody right now. I'm not sure why it's doing that. It usually doesn't do that. Not quite sure what's going on there. So I apologize to you guys as the day goes. If you ask a question, I won't know who it is I'm addressing because it's just showing me in this stupid StreamYard chat as just Facebook users. Okay, so it's Friday night, the Law of One. I was going to play the commercial for my book as well, but I decided because I needed to share things out. And, you know, because we're live on YouTube, we're live on Instagram, and we're live on Facebook. I got to go to Instagram and press go live on that one. And since I'm not using extra monitors anymore because of the radiation level, I'm just using my laptop. I have to click on the different windows to do that. And it takes me a little bit more time. So I went ahead with the Orion Coalition of Light video second after the Orion Rising video first. So now I'm going to play you the commercial. For those of you around the world, you won't be able to see the visuals, but you'll be able to hear the words for my book, to advertise my book, so that you guys don't just have me telling you about my book all the time. So let me go back over here and click on that, and we'll get that up. And that at least is not real long. It's regular commercial length. So let me go ahead and do that. So we'll get that out of the way, and then we'll get into the Law of One. So first, let's pay the bills. Let's put the commercial up for my book. Here we go.
What is the reality about reality? Returning to the old ways. It is a comprehensive book about what is really going on here on this planet. It talks about the true spirituality that the controllers who think they own this planet have been keeping from you for thousands of years. It explains to you the knowledge that you gain from the universe itself when you live the way the prophets of the world throughout time told us how to live. Eat right, meditate, take care of yourself, treat others right. All the things they originally told us to do, but the controllers have removed from right in front of our eyes. The way to ascend to heaven. The reality about reality. Returning to the old ways. On sale worldwide online now.
Okay, so we'll get that out of the way, right, in the beginning, and then we'll just get into the Law of One and move on. And somewhere during the course of the podcast, I'll throw the commercial up there a couple more times, like I normally do, although it's usually just me saying those things and throwing the stuff up there. But I decided to go ahead and load some of my commercials and then go back to the chat so I can see what you guys are saying over here. Okay, so yeah, right. If you're using StreamYard, you have to get to the link to agree. You have to give permission to StreamYard so that their profile is in here. But whoever's saying that to me right now, it's just showing me profile. It's saying Facebook user. I'm still not getting a name. So if that means Facebook's tripping today because nobody's coming through, let me see if I can go over to the Law of One group and click on the live there. And then I'll just have to bebop back and forth between so I can see who's talking. To see if it brings up the chat. Normally it does that there. And so if I do that and then mute that channel, I'll be able to see what you guys are saying. I don't know why, for whatever reason, it's not coming through today. So let me go over here to the comments and bring those up on this and mute this. Hold on. There we go. Now let's see if that loads, and if it does, I'll see. Yeah, now I can see your guys' name. So I'll be bebopping back and forth if I can't. If it doesn't come into the studio for some reason, I'll just open the window up and come over here. Hi, Penny. Hi, Peter. Hi, Cassie. Now I can see that there's a bunch of you guys talking there, and that was Rebecca. Joanne, welcome. Right, Reese, welcome. Brooke, welcome. All right. I don't know why it's not coming into the chat today. Joanne, did I say hi? I don't know why it's not coming into the studio for some reason, but it is over here. So I'll just come back over and take a look there. I could leave it up here, except for when I'm pressing play and pause. I can leave it over here to read the chat since I know that it's not coming in. It's just that if anybody says anything on YouTube, I won't know that they're on YouTube talking unless I go back into the studio. So it doesn't matter. We'll get through, right? It's all good. So most of you guys are on Facebook, so I'll just stay over here. All right. So let me go ahead and start the Law of One, and we'll do a sound check, make sure that you guys can hear it. And we'll go ahead. We're on session 65. We'll just get started on the Law of One and go from there. So I do apologize if you guys are on YouTube and you make a comment, or Instagram and you make a comment and I don't notice it because we're having technical difficulties, or StreamYard is with the communication with Facebook today. I get the comments in here, but I don't get the name plate coming up from Facebook for whatever reason today. Not sure why that's happening. Facebook's got some dilemma. And if I tell Facebook, they'll blame it on StreamYard. If I tell StreamYard, they'll blame it on Facebook. So they'll have to figure their shit out. Okay, so go ahead. Let me go ahead and press play here, and we'll get the Law of One started, session 65. We'll get that started. You guys let me know in the chat if you can hear it okay. I will turn it up a little bit because I know it needs to be a little bit louder. All right, so here we go.
August 8th, 1981. 65.0 Ra. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. We communicate now. 65.1 Questioner, could you first please give us an indication of the instrument's condition and the level of vital and physical energies? Ra. I am Ra. This instrument's vital energies are as previously stated. The physical energies are greatly distorted towards weakness at this space/time due to the distortion complexes symptomatic of that which you call the arthritic condition. The level of psychic attack is...
No, Joanne, I can see your name when I come over to the Orion Rising, where I'm live on Orion Rising, and look at the chat there. So it's not something that you didn't do. It doesn't look like anybody in here is not coming up with their name. It's just for some reason that information is not coming into the StreamYard studio. So you didn't do anything wrong. You guys are all, your nameplates are all up for me to see as long as I'm over here. But yes, StreamYard sometimes gets a little weird, or there's a miscommunication between the signal from StreamYard or from YouTube, Facebook to StreamYard. So you guys' nameplate's up over here. So I just have to come over to this chat here, and I can see who's talking to me, right? Peter Coyle, welcome. I think I said hi to you, right? Yeah, StreamYard is like a politician. You tell it one thing, we're not available. Right? Agreed, Pete. Right. Okay. So I'm assuming you guys can hear it okay. Nobody said that you could hear that, right? So let me know if you were able to hear the Law of One just now. Did anybody tell me that they could hear it? Rebecca said it's okay. So I don't know if she was answering, hearing the sound of the Law of One, or if you guys could hear the Law of One at all just now, because nobody told me. So I'm going to assume that you heard the Law of One, and I'm going to continue.
Constant, but is being dealt with by this instrument in such a way as to eliminate serious difficulties due to its fidelity and that of the support group. 65.2 Questioner, I may be recovering a little ground already covered in previous questioning today, but I am trying to get a clearer picture of some things that I don't understand and possibly develop a plan of my own for activity in the future. I have the impression that in the near future the seeking will increase by many who now are incarnate in the physical on this planet. Their seeking will increase because they will become more aware of the creation as it is opposed, I might say, to the creation of man. Their orientation and their thinking will, by catalyst of a unique nature, be reoriented to thinking of the more basic concepts, shall I say. Is this correct?
Right before he answers that, remember what we talked about. For those of you who listen to the Law of One podcast on the MP3 file live here, and then on the the MP4 file live here, and then the MP3 file later on around the world, you guys don't know that I also do a Zoom class on Wednesday, but we're not on the air, and I answer questions. And I was talking about this on Wednesday to some of you about wanderers around the world. So we'll let Ra answer the question, but we were talking about that, how people have come through to experience this and help with the world. Thank you. Yeah, Reese, thank you. You're funny. Everybody, it's those of you who are listening around the world and can't see the chat, I mentioned that nobody told me whether they could hear it. And then I pressed play and everybody said, sounds good. Sounds fine. We can hear it, blah, blah, blah. And then Reese waited. And then just now he said, just so you know, the sound is good. And then started laughing. Thanks, buddy. That's funny right there. Okay. Yeah, in case you didn't see everybody answering you all at once, it sounds good, bro. That's funny. Okay. So we were talking about that, but people are coming through around the world. And he's asking the question. I'm going to back it up now that I've wasted too much time here. I'm going to back it up so you can hear that question again, because Dawn is asking Raw about that situation and how that affects people who have come through specifically to help everybody on the planet, specifically wanderers who have come through. And that's their mission, is to come down and help people here on the planet. And so this is kind of important. In fact, it's very important, and you'll see. So I'm going to back it up to the question again so that you understand the question or understand the question, and then listen to Raw's answer and explanation as we go forward to the next couple of questions here, because, and then we'll talk about it. You'll see what I'm talking about. So let me back up a couple of seconds here and we'll start this over, okay?
Oops, shall I say? Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. The generalities of expression can never be completely correct. However, we may note that when faced with a hole in the curtain, an entity's eyes may well peer for the first time through the window beyond. This tendency is probable given the possibility/probability vortices active within your space/time and time/space continua at this nexus. 65.3 questioner.
Okay, so Joanne, it's okay. I can see your nameplate over here on Facebook, so don't worry about it. Normally, when you first log in, it asks for permission. The very first time you tune in to the show, it'll ask you for permission to put your name into the Law of One or into the studio for StreamYard, and you have to give it permission. You've already done that a long time ago. You just don't remember doing it. And it's not anything you guys did wrong. It's a miscommunication between Facebook and StreamYard today for some reason. Because you're live here, I can see all of your guys' names and pictures, your icon picture. That's why I'm over here in this, instead of being in the studio reading the chat there, I'm reading the chat here on Facebook. So you're okay. Don't worry about it. All right. So Raw literally said for those people who come through, even wanderers or just people who are starting to pierce the veil, then it's very specific of what he said here, that those people who are able to pierce the veil slightly will then sometimes peer through the window in the distance. Now that's specific for a reason, because people who then start to become unveiled, they don't always focus on the reality or the illusion that is this reality. They sometimes look further past the reality here and start immediately going for the Akashic record. And that is looking through the window beyond instead of looking. So they're literally, as they become unveiled, some people tend to not just focus in this illusion and look around and go, wow, they're lying about everything, and start ascending that way and seeing the things that are here and realizing that there's a concerted effort by evil people to keep you stuck in this place. They don't look at that from the physical standpoint. They go beyond that and start looking in the spiritual, and they don't tend to focus directly right away on the physical and what that entails when you're becoming unveiled. So this is what Raw's talking about here. So let's go to the next question. You'll see that also has its drawbacks. So there's sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not for people to do that. And that's why those of us who have gone through that journey already will work with people, because we will help you with your focus to be able to see both places instead of only one. Because some people then get focused on they're lying and everybody's asleep and you're asleep and you're asleep and you're asleep and why is nobody listening to me? Like a couple of people that come into the chat sometimes that we know about that do that. And then they yell at everybody and get mad because you're asleep and you need to wake up. And then you have the other people who are like, I don't care what's going on here. I'm just going to take care of spirituality and grow myself. and they're not in any way engaging with people in the 3D illusion anymore. They're just like, yeah, you guys got to figure your own shit out. I'm going to figure my own shit out. And so there's a dilemma in focusing only on whichever what's right in front of our eyes in this 3D reality, or your own self in the spiritual. You're not supposed to focus on any one of those by themselves. You're supposed to look within yourself, fix yourself, and at the same time help others, unless you're in service to self. Then you don't care about others, and then you're going to only be taking care of yourself. But that's not necessarily indicative to only people who are in service to self who kind of get caught in that. And that's what Raw's talking about here. So let's continue, all right?
I have assumed that the reason that so many wanderers and those harvested third density entities who have been transferred here find it a privilege and an exceptionally beneficial time to be incarnate upon this planet is that the effect that I just spoke of gives them the opportunity to be more fully of service because of the increased seeking. Is this, in general, correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is the intention which wanderers had prior to incarnation.
Okay, so before he finishes that, Rebecca has a good question. She says, do you think it's on another wavelength or perhaps another dimension? Let me put it up on the screen so you guys can see it there. Now I got to go to StreamYard and click over there because I can't do that over in the other. I'm trying to click on it like I'm in that chat over there instead of over here. See, now you guys can see on your screen that it just shows Facebook user, but I was over in the other chat and knew that it was Rebecca that said that. Do you think it's another wavelength or perhaps another dimension? I think personally it's another wavelength if you can get on that level. I know if you reach a higher vibration, others can't reach you or hear and smell things differently. So yes to both of those questions, Rebecca. It is a different wavelength and it is a different dimension. It's both. Okay. So because literally when you're outside of this realm in the spiritual, that's a different place. This is a dimension, the physicality. We're in a dimension, okay? Third dimension. Your soul, your spirit is in the third density, which is slightly out of phase, and you're seeing through this avatar, okay? So this place isn't actually happening. It just thinks that it is. It is a matrix. But it's not controlled by evil aliens, and you're not in a pod with a thing jacked into the back of your head. So what you're supposed to achieve when you're moving up and ascending from 3D to 4D, that's the realization that I'm not actually here. My soul is in a different place, and I'm seeing through these eyes, and I'm down here experiencing this. That's out of phase. It's a different wavelength, but it's also a different dimension because it's a density. The density is a place where the immortal spirit, the immortal soul resides, and the dimension is physicality. And as you move up in the non-physical, in the spiritual plane, your body will start to go away. Not here in the 3D, but when you move to 4D, your body is not so dense. When you go to 5D, your body becomes less dense, and it won't seem odd to you that happens. You won't go, oh my God, my feet are gone now. Because as you go into a 5D, 6D, 7D, you eventually become just energy, and the physical body goes away altogether. So you move into the density and away from the dimension. So it is, the answer to that question is yes, it's actually both, because it is a dimension and a density. All right, let me go back over here so I can see your guys' comments. Or no, I can see your comments, but now I can see who it is, right? So, and Joanne says, yes, but it's another page after, what is that? After 3 months, we have, as you answering me, we have had a redo. So that's, I assume it's the same over there. I don't know. Oh, I'm not sure what you guys are talking about, right? You guys are talking among yourselves there, right? Okay, so let me continue here. So sometimes we get distracted, is what Raw's point. Sometimes we get distracted by either the too much spiritual and we reside too high. I tend to do that, away from the physical, and I need to be rooted back here in this physical plane, because I tend to stay out of body more into the higher realms in the higher 3 chakras than I do in the lower 3 chakras. Some people can just stay right in the heart and stay in the center and balance between the two. I have to constantly pull myself back down, because what you're trying to achieve is moving up to where you're in that meditative state of awareness that I am not the physical body. I am not the pain body. I am not the thinking mind. I am not the ego. I am the observer and the experiencer. Once you get used to being there, in your beingness, you end up staying there more than you do in this place, and you have to allow this place to pull you back down and ground you sometimes, and sometimes events will do that for you to keep you on track. But it's harder for those people who get caught in here in this place and don't move into the spiritual enough, because it stuns your ascension and you stop ascending, and you're just constantly trying to yell at the world to wake up and get angry about the fact that you know more than these people are who are asleep, and they won't listen to you because they think you're crazy at this point. Let's continue.
For many wanderers whose dysfunction with regard to the planetary ways of your peoples have caused, to some extent, a condition of being caught up in a configuration of mind complex activity which, to the corresponding extent, may prohibit the intended service. 65.4 Questioner, I noticed that you are speaking more slowly than usual.
All right, so before he gets on that, do you see? So what happens is that you get distracted, and your rounded out service that you came here to do, if you're in service to others, you came here more than likely, you came through to do something to help everybody. You'll get caught not necessarily doing what you came here to do, but maybe just trying to force your way through this illusion, and trying to, you're banging your head against a brick wall and you're not making any headway because you got distracted. Or the other way, you were supposed to be down here and doing something in the physical to help everybody here to ascend, and you're not because you're too busy being a Buddhist monk or something, and you're just sitting around and trying to better yourself. And then you at some point will realize, wow, I didn't come here just to excel myself. I came here to actually help others. But you have to discover what it is that you came here to do. And so that's why when I had that conversation with a rabbi that I talk about every now and then, where he was playing God, so he was playing the God's advocate, you would say the devil's advocate, but you know what I mean? He was playing God as God. And he was saying, you guys get too distracted. You get too distracted either trying to figure yourself out because you're trying to fix all the things that are wrong with yourself and do what Carl Jung would say, the shadow work, that you get obsessed with doing that and you forget the bigger picture of helping everybody else. So you're supposed to find that balance of, I need to look within. And that's why if you look in the different Bibles, even Jesus talked about that. You're supposed to expand inward and outward at the same time. So you're supposed to look within yourself and help yourself so that you can then expand your consciousness outward. And in doing so, you can help other people, but you're supposed to also take care of yourself along the way. So you have to remember self-care. You have to remember to take care of yourself and make time for yourself, because some people do the opposite, right? My second wife was that way. She would so much want to help everybody else that she wouldn't take care of herself. Okay. So because of that, I had to stop her a lot and say, let them be for now. You need to have some rest and take care of yourself. But I know, but I got to help them, because just relax. You can do that later. They're not going to go off the edge of the map just because you didn't talk to them for an hour. You need to sit down and regroup yourself and recharge. So we have to look at ourselves, because you can't help other people if you're still completely flawed. So you have to be able to look within yourself, fix yourself, admit, become objective, fix what's within you and say, admit to yourself, I'm not perfect. I have problems. How do people see me? Not how I think they see me, because we don't see reality the way reality is. We see reality the way we are, through our lens of our eyes. That's why I posted about that in the last 5 days with the different reels, memes, whatever you want to call them, reels, shorts on all the platforms. So you have to realize both. So you have to constantly go, okay, I have to fix myself. So I'm expanding, going inward and outward at the same time. But I also, should help the children to bring them along with me. And you have to find that medium of where you are in that. Otherwise, you can get easily distracted by one or the other.
Is there a reason for this? Ra, I am Ra. This instrument is somewhat weak, and although strong in vital energy and well able to function at this time, is somewhat more fragile than the usual condition we find. We may note a continuing bearing of the physical distortion called pain, which has a weakening effect upon physical energy. In order to use the considerable store of available energy without harming the instrument, we are attempting to channel even more narrow band than is our wont. 65.5 Questioner, thank you. Now, have I properly analyzed the condition that creates the possibility of greater service as follows? 1. Seniority by vibration of incarnation has greatly polarized those upon the surface now, and the influx of wanderers has greatly increased the mental configuration, I might say, toward things of a more spiritual nature. This, I would assume, would be one of the factors creating a better atmosphere for service. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. 65.6 Questioner, with the coming changes as we progress into fourth density, I'm speaking of changes not only in the physical third density planet due to the heating effect, but also the changes that are heralding fourth density vibrations, such as the ability of people to perform what we term paranormal activities. I'm assuming that both of these are also and will act as catalyst to create a greater seeking. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is partially correct. The paranormal events occurring are not designed to increase seeking, but are manifestations of those whose vibratory configuration enables these entities to contact the gateway to intelligent infinity. These entities capable of paranormal service may determine to be of such service on a conscious level. This, however, is a function of the entity and its free will and not the paranormal ability. The correct portion of your statements is the greater opportunity for service due to the many changes which will offer many challenges, difficulties, and seeming distresses within your illusion to many who then will seek to understand, if we may use this misnomer, the reason for the malfunctioning of the physical rhythms of their planet. Moreover, there exist probability/possibility vortices which spiral towards your bellicose actions. Many of these vortices are not of the nuclear war but of the less annihilatory but more lengthy so-called conventional war. This situation, if formed in your illusion, would offer many opportunities for seeking and for service.
Okay, so let me unpack some of that, right? You have to remember that everything has the potentiation of creativity or affecting everyone in some way. Everything in the spiritual manifests in the physical. Everything that goes on in the physical will also manifest in the spiritual. So the gateway to intelligent infinity is the gateway to the halls of Amente and that knowledge that you can unlock. But all of those things that happen are a catalyst for the individual so that you, given free will, choose to interpret those things that come into your life or spiritual things and events that happen. And so the same thing, that's why the same thing that happens to many different people has a different outcome and is explained by them and perceived by them in a different way because we're all individuals. So when different things happen, the same download that we could get, that I could get, say you get the exact same download from your higher self or the guides or your guides will affect you in a different way than it will me because I have different things that I'm going to learn and I'm in a different place than you are. So even if you start becoming unveiled to where you can literally go to the Akashic Records, the Halls of Amente, whatever you know that as, and you start perceiving that as a thing, what you do with that when you access it is also completely up to you because of free will. So you may not access it in a way that is, let's say, working from a standpoint of anything really, like what am I supposed to be doing down on Earth, or do I want to learn about my past lives? A lot of people get introduced to their past lives before any other thing. Some people get introduced to out-of-body experiences first. The way that you ascend and the things that come to you are all individual that help you expand your consciousness. So if you're not somebody who's going to be doing astral projecting or remote viewing, you may not have those things come into your awareness or potentiation for you to then learn those skills because you never signed on to do those. So you don't want to do those. So it might be that you have an ability to play the piano or an ability to sing or ability to play a guitar or write stories, or you see what I'm saying? Because you decided when I come down here, you're drawing up your life, you decided what it is that you're going to do down here, and you're going to get that information and potentiation for creation, knowledge from the unveiling before you're going to get being a medium because you didn't sign on to do that, or astral projecting or any of that stuff. Or you wouldn't be a good orator because you didn't come here to speak to people. You came here to write things, or you came here to sing things, or you came here to play guitar, or you see what I'm saying? So there's something that, and that's why you have to look around and figure out what it is that you, if anything, if this lifetime you're focusing on doing something that's non-physical, because all of us learn in different ways and different patterns. Some people come through in the first 3 or 4 lives, they're all spiritual, and the last 3 or 4 lives that they're here, they're completely locked into the physical and don't have anything to do with the spiritual. They just happen to want to learn it that way in the reverse order of, say, someone else. Do you see? So you have to find what it is that I've already done, what it is that I'm doing, and what it is that I'm here to do, and figure that out about yourself. While the only way you can do that is to look within yourself and fix yourself, start working on yourself and start moving up in a spiritual way. Then that information starts to unlock and has the potential to get your attention, as it were. All right, let's continue.
65.7 Questioner. How would conventional warfare offer the opportunities for seeking and service? Ra. I am Ra. The possibility/probabilities exist for situations in which great portions of your continent and the globe in general might be involved in the type of warfare which you might liken to guerrilla warfare. The ideal of freedom from the so-called invading force of either the controlled fascism or the equally controlled social common ownership of all things would stimulate great quantities of contemplation upon the great polarization implicit in the contrast between freedom and control. In this scenario, which is being considered at this time/space nexus, the idea of obliterating valuable sites and personnel would not be considered an useful one. Other weapons would be used which do not destroy as your nuclear arms would. In this ongoing struggle, the light of freedom would burn within the mind/body/spirit complexes capable of such polarization. Lacking the opportunity for overt expression of the love of freedom, the seeking for inner knowledge would take root, aided by those of the brothers and sisters of sorrow which remember their calling upon this sphere. 65.8 Questioner.
That's weird that I didn't plan that, right? So literally we just went through an election 3 days ago here in the United States, where you had the progressive movement that was trying to introduce democratic socialism into the United States, and the people of the United States voting against that because of the reasons for the economy being the way it is. And I had no idea that Session 65 was going to be talking about how that affects people and gives them the opportunity to, then that was something that Raw was going to use as an example. It's serendipitous the way I have noticed, even when I did the Law of One the first time, when I went through all 106 sessions, how it coincides weirdly every Friday with current events, not in a way like a horoscope would, where it's generic. We literally just went through that with that kind of, and people are doing that now in the world. So that's bizarre, right? So Joanne, you said, can you see me on your StreamYard now, Leonard? I'm checking something. Let me go to StreamYard and find out. I can see you on there, but I can't see the name. It still just says Facebook user, right? See, it's having the same problem with YouTube because it's what is that? Is that Risen Nation? Risen Nation just came through. Unless Risen Nation, your icon on YouTube is just the R. It's because he just came through, or she just came through and said, where does the robot voice come from? It's the program that is used that I used for to convert the file. I didn't use AI. I'm using a simpler program to convert the file from the text, because the text that I'm using for, let me put that up on the screen so you guys see that I'm not just talking to myself, right? Yes, it is. It's so what I'm playing for you is an audio file, Risen, that is from the LL Research, from their website, lawofone.info, which is the transcripts, the text transcripts of the channeling session from 1981 that Carla was doing and Dawn was recording. And then they turned that into the 6 books that is currently the Law of One. And this is the actual transcripts from the recording, from the cassette tape that they're recording that is sitting on Carla's chest. And what I did was copied the text from each session, and I put it into a conversion from text to voice conversion. And I'm not using AI to change the speech pattern, so it sounds like a robot voice because I'm using a little bit older technology. Whereas the commercial for my book, which I played earlier, and you probably weren't here for, I could play it again. That one's done with AI, so it actually has a more natural sounding voice. But I'm not paying the money for the AI for when I do raw, so it still has kind of a robotic, tinny kind of sound. I can speed it up and slow it down, but the program is rudimentary. It's about 6 years old, so it was rudimentary AI. And that's why the one that I used before was done by Matthew Moose on YouTube, and that one is the same, but it's an English voice, and it also sounds a little robotic. But I stopped using that because LL Research started putting commercials on there, so I didn't want to have to, every time the commercial came on, either let the commercial play for them or delete it and then have them have a problem with me using that and not playing their commercial. So I started using my own program to do that, and the voice does sound a little robotic, especially nowadays with the advent and upgrades of AI today, right? So so it's reading the law of one from the text from their website, and so that's why it sounds like that. Okay, so let me go back and start right here. With that, I apologize for stopping there. Right, reset. I kind of like the voice from the first series, right? The English voice was if you're high, it messes with you. When I would get high and get really high, that English voice would fuck me up. I would be like, oh, I can't do this right now, man. This is tripping me out, dude. I'm too high for this. But it was a smoother voice. I agree with you, right? So I've been thinking about using the same program that I use to do the commercials that I've done. Like, let me play the commercial again, since we're right here talking about it. Let me play the commercial again, and you can hear the voice on here. And I have like 400 voices to choose from. And I used this one, and listen how more fluent, sounds like an actual actress playing the part, right? Listen.
What is the reality about reality? Returning to the old ways. It is a comprehensive book about what is really going on here on this planet. It talks about the true spirituality that the controllers who think they own this planet have been keeping from you for thousands of years. It explains to you the knowledge that you gain from the universe itself when you live the way the prophets of the world throughout time told us how to live. Eat right, meditate, take care of yourself, treat others right. All the things they originally told us to do, but the controllers have removed from right in front of our eyes. The way to ascend to heaven. The reality about reality. Returning to the old ways. On sale worldwide, online now.
Okay, so I wrote the script to that and then picked that voice and did the voiceover from the other program that I have. It takes me a little bit longer to do, and I was in a hurry, and I started doing it with the voice that's called Mark that you're hearing when I play that. So I just been continuing with doing that one because it's simpler and easier for me to do. But I've seriously been considering changing it over because I have the other program which has AI on it that you heard just now that I created that commercial on. So I'm thinking about upgrading it to that. And there's a couple of really good English voices that are kind of good that aren't as tinny as the ones from Mathimos that were on there that I thought about going to, but who knows if I'm going to finish out doing all of the Law of One this time. We're on session 65 and there's 106. I don't know if we'll make it to the end of the Law of One. What are we on? 117 weeks. So we're almost up to 2 years of just doing it through this one time. So we'll see if I finish it out or not. But that's kind of cool, right? So, right, I know Risen said, thank you. Interesting, thank you. So there may be an upgrade at some point that doesn't sound so tinny, so robotic. I may do that. It just depends on what I feel like doing, because that takes me a little bit longer to put that together. Normally when I edit videos or I make videos, I use that program. It's a far more sophisticated program. But this I can get done for this version. I can do in about 20 minutes. To fix what I need to fix in the verbiage, like so that Raw doesn't say RA. Raw says, you hear him say, I am Raw. So I have to go through and edit those because the computer program now won't say Raw. So for me to do that the other way, I'm going to try it. I haven't done it yet. It might be just easier because I may not have to change the program and change the script. If I don't have to change the script and I just put it in there, but then I have to, you can't, the program that I have is annoying because you can't copy and paste to the script. So I have to type it all in. So that means I have to open a window and type the whole script out into that program. So the only other alternative is to pay apps for AI, so I don't have their watermark on there, right? Because if you do an audio file, you have a audio watermark that'll say the name of the company while Raw's talking. That's annoying to me. I'm already paying, right now I'm currently paying, let's see, I'm paying 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm paying $500 a year to have this podcast on the air, right? To go out to the whole world. So for me to do that would be another $150 a year just to get an audio file, or you guys can put up with a robotic sounding audio file. So I've decided instead of paying another $150 for an AI device to do this, I do it with a rudimentary program, and it sounds a little robotic. That's the truth of that, because I'm paying Zoom $150 a year, I'm paying StreamYard $150 a year, and I'm paying Podbean $150 a year. So is that 1, 2, 3, 4? Is that 450 plus tax? So almost $500 a year just to do this, right? So I could, spend another $150 for a sound or not. All right, let's continue.
Are you saying then that this possible condition of war would be much more greatly spread across the surface of the globe than anything we have experienced in the past, and therefore touch a larger percentage of the population in this form of catalyst? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. There are those now experimenting with one of the major weapons of this scenario, that is the so-called psychotronic group of devices which are being experimentally used to cause such alterations in wind and weather as will result in eventual famine.
They do have on that program that I was talking about that I have, they do have Australian voices. They have Swedish, they have accents. So I could get Finnish, Swedish, Spanish, English, Australian, American. What else? There's a few others that are just Indian. There's a few others that I can use, and then I can do all those languages too. So if I wanted to do it in a foreign language, I could have them read it in a foreign language. I already have that program. But the problem with that one is I can't copy the entire session and paste it into the app to have it say it. I have to type it in by hand, and that'll take me an hour or so to do. And then I have to check the spelling, make sure I have all that done right. So I have to do all that editing. Now I just copy, paste, run through and add an H at the end of all the RA so that this computer program says raw, not RA. And that's all I have to do. So it takes me less than 20 minutes to make this audio file. So it's cheap, it's free, and that's why I do it that way. But you're right, it's funny, right? So, you would think like, I thought about that for my book. If I do audio file for my book, I thought about doing that and having specific language choices for people so that you have the accent that you prefer. So those of you in Australia, if you wanted to listen to it in an Australian person's accent, I was literally thinking about giving you guys that choice, man or woman, whatever you wanted to hear my book being read to you in. I just haven't done it yet, but that's seriously a good idea, right? Right, Rebecca said, let's do a fundraiser if need be, where those videos are on YouTube and Facebook with the same voice. It doesn't bother me, right? Because that's the truth of what it is, and I just haven't. I haven't done that yet because a lot of people have Patreon and a lot of things that you can donate to. So far, I've just been funding for the last 8 years. I've been funding my own podcast with my own money, right? Because I have a company, Leonard O'Neill Investing, and I just put it under that. So I can get all that money back because I put every expense, including my internet and stuff like that, all the expenses through the company for the podcast and everything else. So right now I do pay the money for it, but it goes out of my pocket, and I don't file, and I could file under my company name and put all those as expenses and get it all back from the government at the end of the year. But right now I don't, it's not bothering me that much to just lose that money. You know what I mean? Just to pay it, just to get this information out. So I'm not concerned with it. But if it ever gets to the point where I do have to start paying more people for more things, then I will be keeping receipts and writing all of that off so I can get it back from the government. right? Right, I know, Reese. That's because you've been listening to me from the beginning, right? Reese said, let me put this up on the screen. I'm in the wrong thing to put this up on the screen. Where are you at here? Now I don't see it over here. Now I'm losing it right here. Well, Reese said, let me read it to you. I don't know why the chat was off over there. Reese said, a proper human voice would be odd as raw, as I reckon raw anyways. Right. Well, Raw was coming through originally. If you go to lawof1.info, LAWOFONE.INF as in Frank O, lawof1.info. If you go there and you click on one of the sessions, and you're not on your phone, because if you're on your phone, it doesn't play it. But if you go to it on a website from a laptop or a computer, there's a little blue arrow over on the side of the you click on that, you can hear the actual audio recording, and it comes through from Carla's voice, but she's half whispering and she talks really slow. Raw talked about that at the beginning of this session. You're talking slower than normal. She talks really slow. Like the whole session, if I just played it for you, would take about 20. This session would take about 23 minutes. That session for her to channel was almost an hour because of how slow she speaks when she back 40 years ago channeling Raw. So you can listen to it, but she's almost whispering and she's talking really slow. Okay, let's continue.
If this program is not countered and proves experimentally satisfactory, the methods in this scenario would be made public. There would then be what those whom you call Russians hope to be a bloodless invasion of their personnel in this and every land deemed valuable. However, the peoples of your culture have little propensity for bloodless surrender. 65.9 Questioner, we would seem to have dual catalysts operating, and the question is which one is going to act first. The prophecies, I will call them, made by Edgar Cayce indicated many earth changes, and I am wondering about the mechanics of describing what we call the future. Ra, it has been stated, is not a part of time, and yet we concern ourselves with probability/possibility vortices. It is very difficult for me to understand how the mechanism of prophecy operates. What is the value of a prophecy such as Cayce made with respect to earth changes with respect to all of these scenarios?
Talking about William Cayce. That's what he said when he said Cayce. All right, let's continue.
Ra, I am Ra. Consider the shopper entering the store to purchase food.
Edgar Cayce. Sorry, talking about Edgar Cayce. Let's continue.
With which to furnish the table for the time period you call a week. Some stores have some items, others a variant set of offerings. We speak of these possibility/probability vortices when asked with the understanding that such are as a can, jar, or portion of goods in your store. It is unknown to us as we scan your time/space whether your peoples will shop hither or yon. We can only name some of the items available for the choosing. The, shall we say, record which the one you call Edgar read from is useful in that same manner. There is less knowledge in this material of other possibility/probability vortices and more attention paid to the strongest vortex. We see the same vortex but also see many others. Edgar's material could be likened unto 100 boxes of your cold cereal, another vortex likened unto 3, or 6, or 50 of another product which is eaten by your peoples for breakfast. That you will breakfast is close to certain. The menu is your own choosing. The value of prophecy must be realized to be only that of expressing possibilities. Moreover, it must be, in our humble opinion, carefully taken into consideration that any time/space viewing, whether by one of your time/space or by one such as we who view the time/space from a dimension, shall we say, exterior to it, will have a quite difficult time expressing time measurement values.
Okay, so he's using, talking in parables here. So literally what he's saying, because the question was, what is the function of prophecy and how does that come into play? The overtone is exactly what we teach all the time, and the reason why you don't hear a lot of people talking about prophecy, responsible people talking prophecy very often, and it's the problem that has been arisen for decades with, say, Nostradamus or any person who is speaking prophecy. Everyone says, well, Nostradamus is going to get lucky because he's just generally saying things, and on a long enough life timeline, then he just gets lucky and it happens, something that he said, and people go, that's what he meant. See, he said it. Well, if he wants us to really believe in it, he should tell us the exact timeline to the day, to the minute, to the hour, and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what everyone misses 100% of the time, because they've never read the prophecies of Nostradamus, is that the very first thing Nostradamus said about his prophecies was, all these things that I am about to tell you do not have to come to pass. They are possibilities of a future that I am focusing on, and I'm letting you know as a warning that if the timeline continues going the way it is, these events may happen. Okay? And then if you go to, let's start talking parables, then if you go to Star Wars with Yoda, when he was on Hoth talking to Luke, who was seeing that his friends were being tortured and he needed to go. And he said, if I don't go, they'll die. And he said, die they might. But if you go now, you might ruin all that they stand for. The future is always hard to see because emotion is what the future is. So you don't know that they won't die. And that's when Obi-Wan popped in and said, Luke, you don't know that. You don't know they're going to die. Okay. So what Ra's explaining here is what we teach, that when people are looking at prophecy, they're going to see, and Ra's talking about that right here, said that just now, you're going to see the highest probability of outcomes that can happen in the future. Like the Hopi rock legend from 10,000 years ago, where they say that there are two timelines that the human race is on, and we're coming down to the edge of those timelines. One timeline where most of the humans on this planet die off, and another timeline where there's far more humans than are on this planet, and it's a utopian society. And you have to pick which one of those timelines you're going to go into, and that there's a line that's going to be crossed where you're going to be stuck in one of the other lifetimes outcomes. And so you have to make sure that you're preparing that. And that is echoed in all of the religions, like with the Christians and the rapture. And you have to choose what you're going to do, and you have to be ready when Jesus comes back with that bus, because God said he's going to come as a thief in the night, which is not what that actually meant. But they're using it for that, which is okay that they're using it for that, but they're not actually giving you the real story of it. So the point is that prophecy, when looking into the future, are the probable outcomes based from your point of view of where you're standing in time, and from your perspective of standing in time. So if you're then it depends on what you're looking at, how far you're looking, and then if you're looking at you're going to see the biggest probabilities first, positive or negative outcomes. If you're trying to see a negative outcome, you're going to see it before you see the positive one. If you're trying to see a positive outcome, you're going to see it before you see the negative one. So the adept student or acolyte who is learning to see into the future in prophecy will, if they're adept, will be taught to generally look. A medium speaking to people on the other side will do the same thing. Not that when they talk to somebody, what they're going to say to you is a positive or negative outcome, but that the possibility when someone says, should I take this job? Should I take that flight tomorrow? Should I marry this person or that person? What you're going to see is the probabilities of both. I had a guy that asked me on that same day years ago that I told that woman, because her father came through and I didn't know that, because I'd never met her before, that he had just died and that she was living in her car and hadn't gone home, and he wanted to make sure that she went home and knew where to go and get the deed to the house, and he put everything over to her and all of that. Because of that, everybody that was there wanted me to do readings on them, and there was a guy there who was, at the time, he was like 18 or 19 years old. And he said, who am I going to be with in the future? If I'm going to settle down, who am I going to be with? And I told him the truth. I see you with 3 different women. And he was like, I'm going to have 3 girlfriends? No, I see you with 3 probabilities, 3 possibilities of relationships. And I can tell you that you know all 3 of them currently. Actually, 2 of them you know currently, and 1 you're about to meet. And I can tell you that the outcome of each of those, and you have to choose which one of those because they're all just as equal probability. So you have not made a choice in your life yet. And this is why you're asking me. And I told him who they were and what they looked like. And he was like, dude, I'm actually know two of these women now and have been thinking about asking both of them out. I really like both of them. And he was like, how do you know that? I'm like, medium. So I was wise enough to not choose one for him. Some people won't do that and they'll just choose one for you. You should be with this one because they'll look and see that the person is happier with that person than this person. That doesn't mean that they're really happier. This is a perspective from the medium looking at those and not giving you the choice and just telling you what you should or shouldn't do. Some mediums won't give you the choice and tell you about it because they don't want to seem like they don't know, and then they're indecisive because they're worried. Their ego has them worrying about people. This is what Ra is talking about here, that you have to be mindful when you look into the future that everything in the future is written by all of us every second. Each one of us, because of free will, determines our own future. So if you're asking me about your specific future and you're asking me about a specific event, I still will, if I focus only on that, I can answer that question for you and not be concerned with any other outcome. But if there is another outcome and it shows up, I have the responsibility to tell you that you haven't made a decision yet, and there's these two possibilities. Some psychics won't do that, and they'll just tell you the one that they think you'll be better at or happier. And then later on in life, you choose the other way, and then look back and go, that psychic didn't know what they were talking about because they told me I was going to be with this woman, and I chose this woman instead, and I almost chose this woman, and I don't know why I didn't choose this woman. I chose that woman. It's because that's who you were supposed to be with, but that psychic saw that you would have more strife with this person. I told them you're going to have, you're going to have 3 kids with this blonde woman, and you're going to have 2 kids with the brunette. You're going to have a harder time with her and your relationship, and you guys are going to have a rockier road than you will with this other woman. You'll have a far easier relationship with her and one more child. But ultimately, you have to decide which one is going to be best for you, because I see that if I look far enough into your future, you're just as happy with either one of those outcomes. So I can tell you that the 2 best outcomes for you are those 2 women. So you just have to determine when you're with them, one you're going to get along with and you're not hardly ever going to fight with. The other one, you're going to have a lot of arguments and fighting, but you guys are going to love each other just as hard as the other woman does. So you have to decide which one of those is better fit for you. Because are you somebody who just wants a woman to be completely loyal to you, or are you one that wants a woman that's going to challenge you? And he's like, wow, no psychic's ever talked like that to me before. And I'm like, so you have to figure out what your personality is. Are you okay with a strong female that's going to challenge you? Or do you want one that's going to be completely loyal and but just as loving and caring and respectful? So those are your choices. You're happy with either in the futures that I've seen. And those are the 2 more probable outcomes. So I was awake enough to say that to him. And he was like, wow, that's going to give me stuff to think about. I'm like, well, then that's good. That means I did my job properly. So Ra is saying here, right? Hold on. So let me, I now people are saying stuff and I'm not answering. I apologize for that. Danny, welcome. I didn't see you there and I didn't say hi because I didn't have my glasses on. So I couldn't read. So Danny says, hi, cooking veal Parmesan, good veal Parmesan, fettuccine Alfredo for mom and my son here tonight. Nice. That's a good meal right there. That's a good veal Parmesan and fettuccine Alfredo. That rocks, right? You can have wine with it, right? Are you going to have any wine with it, or do you drink? I don't drink anymore, so I wouldn't have wine, but ultimately, that's fettuccine. So fettuccine would say white, but veal would say red. So you could probably use a Chablis, right? I don't know if you even drink, right? So, okay, Rebecca said, but through the ancient ancestors taught, and then no wine. Oh, okay. See, you're like me. I don't drink. Right. So no wine. Right. So Becky said, our ancient ancestors taught lost teachings through the rise of the Catholic Church, who own, and then I scrolled down and missed it, who own more ancient properties confiscated by the church. Folks are punished for being pagan. Stonework, vibrations, etc., etc. Many old world, hold on, let's get the rest of it up here. Many old world talents, gifts frowned upon this day and age. Well, see, that's why I wrote the book, The Reality About Reality, Returning to the Old Ways. And that's why I have my camera sitting on top of God Man, the Bible Made Flesh, which they wrote that book. I don't remember when that came out. It was like in the 40s, I think, late 49 or 50 or something, that book came out. It's sitting underneath my camera, or I would show it to you. The reason that I wrote The Reality About Reality is because of how much they've taken away from the Bibles of this earth. The knowledge, it's still in there, but they edited out some of it. And I was just talking to a woman that I was working with earlier this week, where she had sent me a Bible verse from 2 Corinthians and said, "Could you explain this to me?" And I said, "Well, it's listed as NIV, which is New International Version. And the wording of the New International Version has been changed from, let's just say, the KJV, the King James Version, which is only 500 years old. And if you go back to the earlier versions, back into the Sanskrit, Coptic, Greek, Roman, before it was translated into English, any one of those versions, you'll see a different narrative." And I said, I oddly just made a couple of reels from 2 Corinthians chapter 3. So here, let me show you those. And I linked those to her so that she could see them. And I explained to her that it's about that chapter, 2 Corinthians. I think it's 2 Corinthians. Now I'm going to have to look. That chapter 3 of that, I'm going to pull up on my phone. I'm going to pull up the one of my reels here and find out exactly so that I'm not misquoting the Bible, because I know that people out there, I am a minister, you guys know that, people out there are going to go, "I can't believe that you're misquoting the section of the Bible." So let me pull this up real quick here. But that section of the Bible is actually about the veiling and unveiling. Yeah, 2 Corinthians. So it's about the unveiling and the old covenant with God and the human race. And the old covenant was what is painted on the roof of the Sistine Chapel by Leonardo da Vinci, where God is reaching halfway down and the person is starting to reach up to God, and their hands are about to meet, and the fingers are about to touch. And that's the covenant. The covenant is, I haven't forgotten you. I haven't abandoned you. I haven't forsaken you. Jesus said that when he was on the cross. "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And then he said, before he said, and everything is done, he said, "Father, why have you forsaken me?" And then he said, everything, it is done now. My brother and I just talked about this. My brother's in theological college currently, following in my footsteps to become a minister and get his doctorate, which I don't have a doctorate. I think he's going to get his bachelor's and then go for the doctorate in theology. So he and I were just talking about this oddly, and then she brought it up. So the verbiage used in the New International Version says the letter, and then says the Spirit. And she said, "I don't understand this." And I said, because they changed the word from covenant to letter and veiling. So it was so they went with covenant to deal to letter in the translation. And they say they're trying to make it easier for people to understand. And what they're doing is there's this concerted effort, this concealed effort. Ra's warning about that. The Orion Crusaders, which you guys know is the Anunnaki, coming down here and giving this information out to the world, that is the controlling of this matrix and how to do that. And they're erasing any knowledge that you can find of ascension. And in doing so, they're editing the stuff so that the words are changed, like they do with equality and equity. equity, before they tried to tell you meant equality, equity meant property value. Value you had invested in something. And now they're telling you it means equality. How can it mean equality from throughout time? That word meant equity is what you have in your property. I have equity in the house that I own. That means how much my house is actually worth if I cashed it in. I have equity in my stock market. How is it that I have equity with you? And that means equality with you. It means I'm equal to you. It doesn't. It means value. So they change and edit things to make it harder for everybody here to ascend. And that's what Ra's warning about. Prophecy needs to be controlled by the person who is looking at it, not to edit it from you, but to be aware that what you're going to see every time you look at prophecy, or even someone else's Akashic record, is either the direct record of what they have done, or into the future, the highest probability, which they have not chosen for themselves yet because of free will, but they're leaning towards currently. And it doesn't mean that when you look at our society into the future, that if it says, well, the world blows up in 2057 because a meteor strikes and kills us, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. That means that that's the biggest probability currently. And if you change something in the mindset of the collective consciousness here, that can be avoided. So you have to have the responsibility, is what Ra is saying to you here, that and the perspective. And then he says he's warning about when you get outside of time and go to the Akashic records or the halls of Amente, and you're looking at prophecy, you also have to be mindful and respectful of trying to translate what you see into the timeline down here in 3D, because when you're outside of the space-time continuum and you're in the place of time-space, where it's just space with no separation of past, present, and future, and time is all now, it's hard to translate what you're seeing as events in the future down here to this place, because you have to recalculate the separation of time. Even when you're down here in this place and you channel it, you also have to be mindful of that. So when people are looking into the future and they're saying, oh, 9/11 is going to happen on this date, not everybody would be able to predict the exact day, being September 11, 2001 at 7:02 a.m. or whatever the exact time was the first plane hit in New York time. Okay. Some people who are really good were able to do that and realize that perspective, but not everybody has that ability right away. And they see things in a generalized gravitas way and from their perspective. So you have to be mindful of that stuff when you are learning that thing, right? Rebecca, I'll do just that. You can Google. She said, "Send me a link." I have your first book. You probably have my Orion Rising, which was edited. It was lousy edited. I didn't have the money, and I'm gonna have to re-edit that and put out a second version of it. That editing was horrible because I didn't have the money back in 2016. This book has been edited properly. We only missed about 12 things that neither myself nor the editor saw after we went through the editing process. And then when the book was printed, I read it and went, "Are you kidding me?" There's like 12 edits. They're not real bad, but they're annoying to me. Right? They're annoying to me. When I read it, I went, "How did we miss this? How did we miss this?" Right? And I didn't talk to the editor afterwards, but it went to print and we missed a few things. But if you go to my Facebook page, there's a link there. So if you go literally, the first thing you see is my book, and I have linked at the top my publisher and a link to my publisher, so you can click that and buy it, or you can just go to Amazon or Google it and just type in "The Reality About Reality" as the title, subtitle, "Returning to the Old Ways." Right. I'll put the picture up again so you can see it. Hold on. Let me go to the studio. I won't play the commercial again, but I'll just put it up on the screen for you to see here so that you can see the book. It looks like that. Is that coming up on the screen here? No, it didn't. Why? Is there a lag from my studio? That's weird that it's not coming up. Maybe I will have to play the commercial because it's saying that it's up on the screen, but I don't see it up on the screen right here. That's bizarre. All right. Let me play the commercial here again.
The reality about reality. Returning to the old ways. On sale online worldwide now. By Leonard O'Neill.
Yeah, I don't know why that's weird. The picture didn't come up on the screen. It said it was on the screen, but it didn't go up on the screen. Weird. Okay, so let me go back to the chat. So you can either just go over to my Facebook page, or you can Google that. And you saw what it looked like there. It's a sky scene with a sign that says caution, reality, check ahead, caution, the reality about reality, returning to the old ways. And that's the introduction to everything I just said to you about that there are people that I refer to as the controllers, because I needed to get it past editing and problems. Couldn't call them Anunnaki or the Orion Crusaders, because then somebody would have not wanted to have the book published. So I call it the controllers, call them the controllers. And they have been editing and keeping people away from that knowledge. It's still there. All of the Bibles have it. And I introduce you to that knowledge in that first book. And now I'm giving you specifics in the second book that I'm writing currently, that I'm not sure what I'm going to title it yet, but I'm giving you more specifics to show you how all these different religions from around the world were saying the exact same thing. And Ra's telling about that in the Law of One, warning that there was a people that came here that gave the people a knowledge and on how to edit and create this society, this global society with a caste system where you have the rich 1% elite people, oligarchs running the world, and all money filters up to them and all power filters up to them. And everybody else is stuck in this proverbial matrix, not being able to graduate because they can't find the key to the door or the door itself. And then you hear people like Jesus explaining that 2,000 years ago, saying, I am the door and the key, using those exact words. All right, let's continue with the and not the only one doing that, by the way, around the world. And I point that out in this book that's currently out, that came out in June. I point that out. And then I'm giving you more specifics in the second book that I'm reading. And if I were to pick up the camera and show you the cover of God, Man, the Bible Made Flesh, that book also, but that one focuses just purely on the Christian and Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament and the New Testament, showing you the same thing that I'm telling you about, that they talked about, that they were aware of. But I get in more details and show you the Viking religion, the Hebrew religion, the Christian religion, the Muslim religion. I talk about the Mesopotamian. I talk about the Egyptian. I talk about the Atlantean. I talk about all of those throughout time. So even the Atlantean goes back 77,000 years, and all of these others are 5 to 7 to 10,000 years old. And they all knew the same information and were telling the world, and still there in all of their Talmuds, their Bibles, and the Colburn Bible from Scotland. It's all still in their Bibles if you know where to look for it. And I'm not the only one in the world who's doing this. There's other people out there that I see that know what I know, and they're telling the world, did you know that the Book of the Dead by the Egyptian Book of the Dead, that's about balancing your chakras, all the waypoints that you have to know the God name to pass through that gate and open that gate on that boat to make it to heaven. And the spells that you have to cast to get there is, in fact, balancing your chakras to get there. And if you read the Hermes Bible, the Hermetic text, that was based on the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. The Emerald Tablets of Thoth is literally about the ascension and about the chakras and how to balance them and to be able to get into heaven. The revelation of Jesus Christ, the letters to the churches, is also about the same thing. The letters to the churches are not letters to some far off church that existed 2,000 years ago. It's actually and I show you that. I describe it to you in the first book, and I'm actually breaking it down for you in the second book to show you the word of each church coincides with what each chakra is in your body. And the message that Jesus is writing to those churches is in fact written to you and me and everybody else, telling us how to balance the chakra and saying, if you're in service to all, you will balance your chakra this way. If you are in service to self, you will balance it that way. And those who balance it this way will ascend to heaven, and the other ones will stay in this physical plane. And then when you go to the story of Moses and the plagues of Egypt, when he was dealing with Ramses II, the plagues of Egypt And all of that entails of that story. There were originally 7 plagues of Egypt, and the Hebrews added 3 more to make it 10. So the first 7 plagues of Egypt are the 7 chakras that are in your body, and if you don't balance it, then the gluttony and the rage and the living in the bottom 3 chakras has you basically living the life of the Egyptian or the Ramses II and failing and not making it to heaven. But if you balance your chakras the way you're supposed to and do the things God said to do, and the Hebrews followed God's plan and what to do, the lamb's blood painted door and Passover and all those things, so the creeping death doesn't come in. That's balancing the chakra. The creeping death was green. That's the 6th. That's the 6th. It's the 4th chakra, but it's the number 6. It's the heart chakra. So the creeping death, your heart chakra will either give you love or give you pain and death. And if it gives you pain and death, it's because you're living in the lower 3 chakras. And for all of the Egyptians, they were living in the lower 3 chakras. And that meant that the firstborn son died from all of them, but passed over the Egyptians. Why? Because of love and them balancing their chakra and doing what God said. So I am explaining that more in detail in the second book, but I mentioned it in the first one. So I apologize if some of you are like, oh my God, he's going on about something crazy over here, right? Yeah, Rebecca, by the way, she was one of my first admins for Ancient Aliens worldwide and worked with me for a long time. And I lost touch with her. We had a falling out, but I had a falling out with everybody in that group for a while there. Some of you know that because I've told you the story. And then I didn't realize that we weren't friends anymore. And I just happened to be on Facebook because it was telling me so-and-so had a birthday. And I clicked on their birthdays and I was telling happy birthday to some of my friends. And when you do that, it pops up and said, somebody sent you a friend's request. So I clicked on that and went over to the list of friends requests. And then when you do that on Facebook, it also brings up a group of people that are recommended for you. And while I was looking at the person who sent me a friend's request, I glanced down and I saw Rebecca Silva. And I was like, we're not friends? I'm going to send her a friend's request. I'm like, we've known each other for 10 years. What? And I'm like, I didn't think we unfriended one another. She told me that her account got screwed up and she had to create a new account. And because the Facebook thought she was being hacked and she wasn't. She was trying to get into her account because her phone got destroyed and she was trying to get back in with her new phone and they thought she was being hacked. And then, so they locked her account. So she created a new one. And her name popped up for me. And so I sent her a thing and she heard we're talking earlier today. Right. So, yeah. So, okay. So, and then she was like, wait, you're doing your podcast? Then give me a link. I'll pop in. And here she is talking. Okay. So when you're looking, let's get back on point. I'll get back to Raw. So when you're looking at anything astral, doing a medium work, or even your own spirituality, once you start moving into 4D or 5D, the realization that I am not this pain body, I am not this physical plane, that I am somewhere else, that I am the observer, I am the experiencer, I am a co-creator, then you're starting to get into 4D thinking and the realization of that reality. That unlocks the possibility, probability, vortices, as Ra would say, the probability, possibility of those different vortexes of your knowledge that you can open up and unlock. But you have to be responsible with that information that you gain and realize that is from your perspective first. Secondly, the perspective of what you're seeing is the only one probable outcome, possible outcome of the future, because the future is not currently written until we get there. So you can see events that you could look into the future and see the entire planet blow up and then freak out and think we're all going to die. And the truth is that you weren't realizing that there was another timeline that was next to that was just as probable, where the earth doesn't blow themselves up with nuclear explosions. And he's literally using that as an example here. Okay. So you have to realize both of those and not freak out and scare yourself. So we have told people in the last 10 years to stop preaching prophecy to the world, because if you don't want the Third World War to happen, stop talking about it, because the fear of the possibility of what's going to happen in the Third World War will drive people by fear to make that come into being, because we are all co-creating this place. And that is what the evil people on this planet, that's why they are pushing certain narratives, because they want everybody to be afraid. They're pushing fear, first of all. And because fear is a very prevalent emotion. Fear, anger is just as prevalent of an emotion as love and caring is. So if they can't get everybody, because they can't control love, but what they can do is make you afraid. So if they can get you to live into fear and then go, the world's coming undone. This is what they've been doing in the last year. Okay. Over there, this thing in Israel is going to blow up into the Third World War any minute. That's what they're saying on every news channel, on legacy media all day long. And then you have this over in Russia with the Ukrainians, and they're like, this is going to turn into a Third World War in Europe any second. And that's what they've been preaching since that war started, because they need all of us to be living in fear and to manifest. Those two events are going to blow up to the world. And why? Because people like me who are awake are telling you and warning you of what's going on this planet. They need to put me to sleep as quickly as they can, so that if I die, I will have to be reborn. And guess what? You get veiled when you're reborn. So too many people are awake on this earth, and they need to shut us all up. And so therefore, if they can get a Third World War going and get everybody to blow each other up and lower the population at the same time to a more controllable population of less people, and everybody else has to then be reborn and recycle, they all come in veiled and have to get unveiled again. That is what they're up to. And that is what they're trying to do, because too many people around this earth are waking up exponentially and seeing what's going on, and they're losing their power and they're losing their control over the planet and over the people. And they have to stop that from happening at all cost. And that's why they keep trying COVID and the like, and now doing with the lockdowns and all of that, and going forward and trying to enact socialism around the world, because they want everybody to freak out and to manifest it so that they can literally make it happen and shut everybody up by killing people off. Do you see? Okay. So, and some people are going to think I'm crazy for saying that. And you can, if that's what if you're locked into 3D reality and you are completely veiled, you are going to think that I am insane that I just said that. And you're going to go, okay, you're crazy and I'm out of here. Okay. But if you're in any way spiritual, you're going, yeah, I can see that might be true. So maybe I should look into it. Right. Right. Risen Nation says, I'm glad I don't follow the whim of mankind so easily. That's happening more and more in the world. More and more people are. I was just talking to Cassie before I was live. Her and I talked this morning. I was just talking to her about that specific thing, and not realizing that was where Raw was going to go today. But I was just talking about that specific thing because of the agenda of our coalition and what we're doing in the world, and pointing out to her that how the earth is changing, and there are some people, even in the politic, even in that religion of evil, there are some people in there that are seeing that there was a change that is happening on the world that is not a political change. It's a change in ideology of the masses around the world. And there's this shift in energy away from allowing that politic, that religion, to control them anymore. And the people seem to start to be standing up more around the world in every country and starting to take back the control from the governments who have enacted total control over people and believe that they own you. And that there is this effort that people are just now waking up and going, no, we're not going to allow you to do that anymore. Okay. Risen Nation said, what is it called to consider being only in heaven for many cycles of this earth before being allowed to step upon it as a human, and that there are only memory in any prior existence? That's actually a good question. Okay. So let me put this up on the screen for these. You guys can see what I just read, right? So what is it called? What is it called to consider being only in heaven for many cycles of this earth before being allowed to step upon the earth as a human. And that's the veiling. What happens is, that's actually a really good question. Okay. So now I'm not going to give you my minister answer, earthly. I'm going to give you my spiritual answer as a being, the reality of reality. Okay. The normal cycle for a human is 7 to 10 lifetimes. And in that time, you become self-aware the first time. And so you're born as a child, you're self-aware as a human on this earth. Through the 7 to 10 lifetimes, you come in as different people in different places on the planet, boy, girl, man, woman. And you learn a bunch of things that you set down for yourself to learn, generic things like you're going from grade 1 to grade 12 and then moving into college, right? You learn general education and then you start learning specific things when you become an adolescent. And while doing that, you're waking up more and piercing the veil. When you die, there's a time period that you have to stay off the earth normally before you can recycle back in. The reason for that is the veiling, is the forgetting of knowledge. And the reason for that is the time is that if I die today and I'm going to come back, I don't want to come back in 3 days and be born, because there's a possibility that I'll run into, as a child growing up, family members or people that I'm friends with in this life. And to have an organic experience, I have to have that veiling and not recognize people. So there's usually a time period of 100 years after you die before you get to come back and recycle back into another human body. And that's done so that you don't inadvertently become unveiled faster than you're supposed to. However, that's changed because of the crunch in the time, because on this earth, the cycle for this human race we're past due for a harvest by a lot of time, by like 75,000 years overdue. So because of that, and then you'll see where I'm going with this, because of that, people who die are coming back 2 and 3 and 5 years after they died. And then when they come through, they're more confused. So there's a lot of people out here that are confused. And I don't mean sexually confused. I mean, they come through and sometimes they don't know if they're a boy or girl. And then they resort back to being whatever it is they are most of the time. And if they happen to be in the wrong body, now they're a man in a woman's body or a woman in a man's body. And they don't understand that it gets created. But also there's more confusion and you start having bleed over of lives. So people come through and that all of a sudden somebody's born like me, say with a European DNA, but they love everything Japanese. And they don't understand why. And then we joke about it. I was probably Japanese in my past life. You were Japanese in your past life. And that's why you love Japanese stuff so much. The residual is bleeding over into this life and you're picking up that affinity for that origin, even though your DNA says you're not from there, because in the past life that you were just in, you were Japanese. So that is attempted to be avoided by the natural progression of why you have to stay off the earth for 100 years, so that you can then, when you're born and you come in legally and you're born, you're veiled, and the veiling in this matrix takes. And you're then the person that you're going to be in this lifetime, in this body, and you get oriented to this matrix and you're completely veiled, very well veiled, and you don't have that bleed over residual coming through from your past life. A lot of that's happening now because we're overdue and people are recycling faster. As we get closer to 2033, 2030, and 2050, when the changes are going to be huge exponential changes like 2012 was and 2016 was, we're going to have like 2012, we're going to have huge changes that are going to occur between now and 2030. And then 2033. 2033 is going to be, by then, between 2027 and 2033, it's going to be the 2000-year anniversary of Jesus being here. And so there's going to be big changes there going into 2030, and then 2050 is going to be the beginning of the utopian era on this earth. A lot of people aren't talking about that, but many people are starting to talk about that now. So the changes that are going to happen are going to be exponentially crazy, cool changes between now and 2050. The next 25 years are going to be a lot of changes going on the planet, and they've already started. Okay. So because of that crunch time, people are coming back through faster, not because of the crunch time, but because of what we're about to go through as a human race. Is no one wants to miss out. And so everybody's coming right back in and saying, I don't care that I'm going to have bleed over. I need to be alive for that experience, for that to happen. So there's a lot of people that are coming back through who just died 5 years ago, and they're already born now because they want to be awake or at least alive enough to be here and know what's happening and to feel the experience of what's going to happen. I don't know if that's helping you at all. I know I kind of went on a little bit more than I probably should have, but hopefully that answers your question, right? Right. So, right. Yeah. Rebecca, she said you got Leo, makes sense to me, right? Yeah. So, all right, let's continue with Ra. And so you have to be, let me get back on point. We'll continue with Ra. You have to be aware that your perspective in looking at the future is that you're going to see the largest possible outcome. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's set in stone. The further out the vision that you're looking at is, the more that can be avoided, whatever it is that you see. So if you're looking at something and you're seeing tomorrow, you're going to see a little bit more closer to mark of, if somebody says, should I take that plane ride tomorrow? And you go, no, don't fly to New York on that flight because that flight's going to crash. There's a very good possibility that plane's going to crash tomorrow. But if they say, I'm supposed to be taking a flight in March, should I take that flight? And I look at your March on that flight, and there's a possibility the plane might crash. Doesn't mean that it's going to happen. It just means that that's one of the probabilities, and I should look to see if there's another outcome and what the probability of those outcomes are before I tell you yes or no. Because I could see that one outcome that's destructive and tell you no, and then you go and it doesn't crash, or you don't go and it doesn't crash, and you should have went because now you missed an opportunity to meet your husband or your wife for the very first time because you were going to fly to Egypt. And I told you don't go because the plane was going to crash because I saw that as a possibility, but didn't look at the other outcome that was just as probable and look further ahead and find out that that's where you're supposed to meet your spouse. And now you don't meet that person, and you may not meet them for in this lifetime, and you were supposed to. And it's my fault because I told you that, but you'll never know that. Okay, until you die, and then you'll go, why didn't I meet my wife on that I was supposed to be with that person, and I signed on for that? Oh, there was that psychic who told me not to go, and I listened to them. And then that psychic will then realize they made a mistake after they die, and they're like, shit. So we have to be mindful of what we look at and see all probable outcomes. And that's why we tell people don't talk about prophecy, because you can make a prophecy happen that we don't want to have happen, that we're trying to do a different one. And that's why you don't hear a lot of talk about prophecy. But if you go back to the 80s and the 90s, man, that's all everybody talked about was doom and gloom, the end of the world prophecies and how everybody's going to die.
Thus, prophecy given in specific terms is more interesting for the content or type of possibility predicted than for the space/time nexus of its supposed occurrence. 65.10 Questioner. So we have the distinct possibility of two different types of catalyst creating an atmosphere of seeking that is greater than that which we experience at present. There will be much confusion, especially in the scenario of Earth changes, simply because there have been many predictions of these changes by many groups giving various and sundry reasons for the changes. Can you comment on the effectiveness of this type of catalyst and the rather wide pre-knowledge of the coming changes, but also the rather wide variation in, shall I say, explanation for these changes? Ra. I am Ra. Given the amount of strength of the possibility/probability vortex which posits the expression by the planet itself of the difficult birthing of the planetary self into fourth density, it would be greatly surprising were not many which have some access to space/time able to perceive this vortex. The amount of this cold cereal in the grocery, to use our previous analogy, is disproportionately large. Each which prophesies does so from an unique level, position, or vibratory configuration. Thus biases and distortions will accompany much prophecy. 65.11 questioner. Well, this.
All right, before you ask that question, right? Hi, Celeste. I didn't see you there until I went over here and see that you were the one that said reincarnation and immediately into the same family. It's been hell, right? So, and then Penny saying that my son at 4 asked me, "Do you remember me being? Do you remember being my ex-husband father or ex-husband's father?" So yeah, that does happen. I have one of my nieces, my youngest sister. Her daughter was our father. Okay. She doesn't remember it. And she says we're crazy when we talk about it. But when she was 2 years old, I think about 2, I was taking care of my grandmother who had cancer. So I was living with my grandmother, and my sister, that specific sister, Deborah, who's not here today, but she moved in with me to help take care of my grandmother, and she brought her 2 kids. Okay. So she moved in with the kids, and her and I were taking care of grandma and her kids and working and paying the bills and taking care of everything. And one night, my buddy was over, and he and I were sitting in the kitchen talking. And my sister was off at work, and I was off that day, so I didn't have to go to work. So I was hanging out, babysitting the kids and taking care of grandma. And my buddy came over, and he and I were talking. And it was time for the kids to go to bed. So I sent the boy to bed, and I sent both of them in to shower and brush their teeth. And the boy went to bed. He was the oldest. And the girl came out. She didn't want to go to bed. She was afraid she was going to miss out on what was going on. And I said to her, I said, well, it's time for little girls to go to bed. And I said, so now you've taken a shower and you brushed your teeth. And so now you need to go to bed. And she said, she looked at me and she said, I remember when I was the daddy and you were the little boy. And I looked at her, being awake enough to not discourage her or giggle. And I glanced at my buddy, and he looked at me and looked at her. And I looked at her and I said, really? So when was that? That's what I said to her. So when was that? She goes, you remember, silly. You were there, she says to me. And so at this point, I'm intrigued. And I said, really? So tell me about it. And she says, she tells me of the time when she was my dad bringing me home from the hospital when I was born. And I saw the video of that reel to reel on Super 8, reel to reel projection when I was a teenager, which she could never have seen. I never told that story. Her mother didn't know that story. So she couldn't have heard that story from anyone. My mom had forgotten about it. And I saw the video that my uncle filmed of my father bringing me out of the car and carrying me up to the house, to the apartment upstairs. And she described every single detail of that moment from the perspective of my father, and said the entire ordeal, told me who was behind the camera, told me what she was wearing, told me what I looked like, told me every detail that I knew, okay, and from what I saw in the video. So she couldn't have seen it because that video had been destroyed 10 years before she was born, or 5 years before she was born. So she couldn't have seen it, okay? And she said, I was the daddy and you were the baby, and I told you when to go to sleep. And I said, well, in this lifetime, I'm the adult, you're the child, and it's time for you to go to bed. She doesn't remember this conversation now. So when her mom mentioned it to her when she was an adult, she said, I don't know what you're talking about. That never happened. You guys are crazy. But she has traits that are just like my father, that certain specific things she does, and the way she does things, that one of the things that she does that's just like my father is, for no reason, she's always this way, for no reason at all, she'll get flowers to give to her wife just because. My father did that all the time to my mom. He was that kind of person, that romantic. She does that now to her wife. And the way she moves and everything. She is the granddaughter of my father, so she might have some DNA residuals, but she does other things. She doesn't remember it. She's an individual, and she says, how come she doesn't remember? Because she's not him now. The soul that was in our father's body is in that body, but she is not that personality. She's a completely different person down here now. She just came back through in the same family. So it does happen that they come through in the same family. And that kind of gets when you recognize it, like Celeste was saying, that sometimes it gets to be a little annoying, or it's just like you said. She said it's been hell, right? So that does happen when you look at that. Right now, my screen's jumping around here, right? In tarot readings, Celeste says, in tarot readings, I always remind people that this is the outcome based on decisions made today. If you don't like your reading, you can change it by making a different choice. Yeah, see, so Celeste is aware of that when she does a reading and says, these are the probable outcomes. It doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be set in stone. If you don't like it, you can change the outcome. And that's why I posted my reel last night that says life doesn't have a remote. Get up and change it yourself. Because that you have to be the one who determines your outcome, right? Rebecca said, boom, right? Polly, welcome. So you have to be the one who takes control of your reality. And then you have to realize that our reality that we perceive is not actually reality. It's how we perceive reality. So going back to another analogy, Qui-Gon Jinn said to, I think it was Anakin Skywalker before he became Darth Vader, you have to realize that your focus determines your reality. Your intention determines your reality. So you have to realize that you're seeing your reality through the lens of all of your experiences that are in your personality, and who you are currently is what's determining what you see reality as. So when you become objective and not subjective in life, you then are more honest with yourself, and you can see things from other people's perspective of how they see you, not how you think they see you or how you see yourself. So you have to learn to stop seeing yourself the way you see yourself if you want to fix yourself and see yourself the way other people see you, and be aware of that. You don't have to agree with how they see you, but you have to be aware of how you see, and what you say to people counts. And we teach this in leadership, that it's not what you say, it's what people hear. So you have to be mindful of the words you choose, so that there is no miscommunication if you're giving someone a directive or you're trying to convey a thought. So that's why I speak in parables, so that if you don't get what I'm saying in one way, I tell you different ways, because I know that people learn 7 different ways. And so I try to give you a breakdown of different examples. And most people who speak do that. Jesus spoke in parables as well, like the Sermon on the Mount were 7 parables, and they were all telling the same story, and people thought he was telling 7 distinct different stories. He was telling 7 different stories, but the moral of all those stories was identical. So people who tend to speak to the masses will realize that I may say something this way, and that might only get 25% of the people to fully understand what I'm saying. So if I give examples along the way, that helps everyone else that maybe not resonate with this particular way start to resonate with something that they can refer to, a memory of that they have, or something that's similar, that they will then go, oh yeah, I get that, because, and then they invent their own or remember their own parable or example of that thing. And that's why sometimes it takes a while for me to get things across to people, and people go, oh my God, he's repeating himself. Well, that's because they are aware that I'm speaking in parables, and not everybody are. Okay. So you have to realize that, right? Because I hope you're talking to me, right? You are a light in the darkness. That's what I intend to be, but you're probably saying that to other people here from something you guys are saying for having a conversation of yourself. So let's continue with Raw. Okay. Let's continue here.
This entire scenario over the next, shall I say, 20 years seems to be aimed at producing an increase in seeking and an increase in the awareness of the natural creation, but also a terrific amount of confusion. Was it the pre-incarnative objective of many of the wanderers to attempt to reduce this confusion? Ra, I am Ra. It was the aim of wanderers to serve the entities of this planet in whatever way was requested, and it was also the aim of wanderers that their vibratory patterns might lighten the planetary vibration as a whole. thus ameliorating the effects of planetary disharmony and palliating any results of this disharmony. Specific intentions such as aiding in a situation not yet manifest are not the aim of wanderers. Light and love go where they are sought and needed, and their direction is not planned aforetimes. 65.12 Questioner. Then each of the wanderers here acts as a function of the biases he has developed in any way he sees fit to communicate or simply be in his polarity to aid the total consciousness.
Right. Celeste said that's why we all sound like fortune cookies. Right. I mean, that's the truth, right? That's funny. And thank you, Rebecca. So, yeah, you have to realize that, I don't know who it was that said that. Let me go over here and in the studio. One of you said, where was it here? Be your own light took me forever not to be an asshole. I'm not sure who said that because it just came up as Facebook user, and there's a lag over here on Facebook. So whoever it is that said that, it'll pop up in a second over here and I'll know who said it, but I don't because it's not over here on Facebook yet. For whatever reason, it's coming from another page. So sometimes we have to be reminded. Sometimes we have to remind ourselves. I knew a guy when I was working in construction management, a HVAC guy that I used. One day I went over and he was sitting in his van. He was about ready to go to this job site where we were putting in a house. And I went over to his van and I said, I looked in the van door and I said, "Hey, how you doing, bro?" And he says, "Oh, I'm getting ready to go in here and talk to the contractor." And taped to his dashboard, he had a piece of paper taped on there and it said, "Don't be a dick." Big 8x10 piece of paper with it handwriting on it said, "Don't be a dick." And I said, "What's that for?" And he goes, "Sometimes I'm a dick, and I have to remind myself before I get out of the van, the first thing I look at, or when I get back in the van, the first thing I look at is that sign that says, 'Don't be a dick,' so that I don't go and say something stupid and be a dick or an asshole to somebody that I'm either working for or I'm trying to work for." Because sometimes I'm that way, right? So sometimes we have to remind ourselves not to be assholes and calm down. And that's why I like that, Taylor Swift put that song, you need to calm down. And that was kind of what that was about, right? We need to relax and take a breath. Sometimes we need to breathe. Our society is so wound up all the time with the fear that these guys are pushing on us. In the social media networks, on the legacy news, in movies and programming on television. There's a reason why they call it programs, is that they're programming us with fear. That's why we tell people, my brother just had to do this in theological colleges. They teach this, and I've been teaching this for years. If I'm working with you, I'll tell you, for the next week, I want you to stay off of social media for as many days as you can. Because if you do that, you realize how much fear they're pushing on you. And that so you don't realize how much that's controlling your life. Your phone, your smartphone is controlling your life, and the apps are controlling your lives, and social media is controlling your life. You don't know that it's doing that until you pull back from it. And that's why we teach in like paganism, Wiccanism, Druidism, where we teach people all the time. We're saying, and more people integrating this into society now, you need to go out to nature and spend time with nature. Because when you get away from this whole world and you get back to nature, you literally start to make contact with the planet and nature itself. And you will expand your consciousness faster when you unplug from the matrix and you don't know that that's stifling you. And they do. They know about it. The oligarchs who believe they own this country, own this world, own this planet, and they believe that they own you, they know about it, and they want you plugged into their society, to their matrix at all times to keep you at a low level of vibration so that you won't wake up and you'll stay veiled, so that you won't realize what's going on, so that you won't graduate and get out of this place, because they want you as their slave, because they make money off of you and they can keep their legacy going. And keep in control of you and everybody else on this earth, and keep their families in charge for generation after generation after generation, if they keep everybody at war and at odds with each other, living in fear. All right, I'm going to press play, and I'm going to run over into the living room. It's getting dark here. I need to go and turn and close the blinds and turn on a lamp for my mother in the living room, because she's going to be watching television in the dark in a few minutes. So I'm going to press play and for raw for you guys, and I'll be back in about 30 seconds. All right.
Of the planet. Is there any? shall I say, more physical way that he aids in what I mean is, do the vibrations somehow add, just as electrical polarity or charging a battery or something? Does that also aid the planet, just the physical presence of the wanderers? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct and the mechanism is precisely as you state. We intended this meaning in the second portion of our previous answer. You may, at this time, note that as with any entities, each wanderer has its unique abilities, biases, and specialties so that from each portion of each density represented among the wanderers comes an array of pre-incarnative talents which then may be expressed upon this plane which you now experience so that each wanderer, in offering itself before incarnation, has some special service to offer in addition to the doubling effect of planetary love and light and the basic function of serving as beacon or shepherd. Thus there are those of fifth density whose abilities to express wisdom are great. There are fourth and sixth density wanderers whose ability to serve as, shall we say, passive radiators or broadcasters of love and love/light are immense. There are many others whose talents brought into this density are quite varied. Thus wanderers have three basic functions once the forgetting is penetrated, the first two being basic, the tertiary one being unique to that particular mind/body/spirit complex. We may note at this point while you ponder the possibility/probability vortices that although you have many items which cause distress and thus offer seeking and service opportunities, there is always one container in that store of peace, love, light, and joy. This vortex may be very small, but to turn one's back upon it is to forget the infinite possibilities of the present moment. Could your planet polarize towards harmony in one fine, strong moment of inspiration? Yes, my friends. It is not probable, but it is ever possible. 65.13 Questioner, how common in the universe is a mixed harvest for a planet of both positively and negatively oriented mind/body/spirit complexes? Ra, I am Ra. Among planetary harvests which yield an harvest of mind/body/spirit complexes, approximately 10% are negative, approximately 60% are positive, and approximately 30% are mixed, with nearly all harvest being positive.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to pause right here for a second. I just happened to look over on Instagram, and it looks like it's for some reason it's a dark color, so I can't look at it. But it says PR Diva. Is that Lonnie? That's Lonnie, isn't it? Lonnie joined over there, and she said, "My dear friend, Lonnie, my ex-roommate, one of my oldest friends." Hi. Oh, wow. Hopefully you're still over there, and you hear me seeing you and acknowledging you. I didn't look at that chat until just now. So if that's you that's over there, what's up, chick? So yeah, and that's Lonnie. That's got to be her because PR Diva, that's her, right? So Lonnie, if you're still over there on Instagram, hi, I apologize that I didn't go over and see that chat until just now. You may have said hi to me like an hour ago. So if you're not there, I apologize. You'll never hear this unless you tune back in. If you are still over there, howdy, right? We were roommates for years. Okay. So, right. Think about and then there's Woo Riders. Welcome, Woo. So think about the power of the Baghdad batteries and the vibration that they created. We have been lied to and dumbed down. When you meet someone on a high vibration, it's like a high. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, look at just that, right? From the Ancient Alien series where they discovered in archaeology the Baghdad batteries, and that's 5,500 years ago, and they had batteries, right? And then they were able to recreate one. I remember when Giorgio Tsoukalos and Richard Childress did that on the show, where they made a clay pot, put orange juice in it, put copper in it, and what else was it? Something else, and then they were able to use the wires to show that there was electricity coming off of it. And when I was a kid, we were taking a potato and putting, 2 nails in it and hooking up wires to it. And the teacher was showing us that we had the power just from that. The citric acid in an orange, for the orange juice in that specific case, would literally, they created a rudimentary battery. A battery that we have today is the battery acid is just the acid instead of citric acid. It's a chloric acid of some kind, or is it hydrochloric acid? Don't quote me on that. God, I haven't thought about my chemistry. I haven't been in chemist now for 10 years, so I haven't thought about that chemistry. but we don't use the citric acid, but we use another acid, and then we just charge it with electricity, and it holds the charge. That's what's in our batteries. Now it's acid with water, and usually a cardboard with wax over it, so that it absorbs the water and holds the water, and then that stops the acid from overcharging and doing damage to you or feeling hot. So it acts like an insulator, and then it holds the charge in there, and that's what's inside of our batteries. If you break a battery open, then or a car battery, and you look inside, you'll see the little paper filaments that are in there. That is cardboard with wax over it, so that it doesn't absorb all the water and break down. But it acts as an insulator to keep it from getting too hot, right? So we basically, our batteries for our cars and in our computer components, like the remote right here, those are the same batteries that the Baghdad batteries were from 5,000 years ago. And we thought we invented that, and here we find it in history. So they lied about what technology they had 6,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago to the world. And it wasn't until the guys from Ancient Aliens, which Rebecca and I are both friends with, almost all the guys from the television show, until they discovered it and started telling the world about it, that's been hidden from the world, all the technology that they had. People were like, they didn't have any technology, so they weren't very advanced. And come to find out, they had technology. They just didn't build steel buildings, and they didn't have aircraft the way we have it. Our technology is different, but now we're starting to realize that older societies that died out, say 77,000 years ago, they had all kinds of technology, and even the ones that were less computer-minded technology had advances that we don't even have today, and had capabilities of doing things that we can't replicate today. So everyone goes, it must be aliens that did it, because we couldn't do it, and there was no way they could do it back then, because they were dumb. They weren't like us. We were smart, so if we can't do it, there's no way they could do it. And it was a lie that they couldn't do some things, and they didn't have technology. That's been kept. It's part of what they erased. It's part of what the Anunnaki had them erase, so that we wouldn't know now, and we could stay dumbed down. And so that was part of the concerted effort. When they burned Alexandria, Rebecca, you'll know about this, we've talked about it in the past. When Julius Caesar burned Alexandria, they were burning all the scrolls that had all the true history of the human race, some of which were taken and transported by the Romans to the Vatican archives. And now it's off limits, and we can't read any of it. But some of that information was stolen by the Essenes and by the Scottish Freemasons and the Templar Knights, and some of that information was skirted off and then told to the world. And then we found the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Scots put it in the Colburn Bible. The Templar Knights hid that information and started leaking it to the world. And people have been trying to kill them all off to keep that information from being told. We had the Renaissance, where they burned all the books after they burned all the scrolls before that. Why would they do that? Because they're trying to keep us from knowing our true origins, the message that was preached to us on how to ascend, so that we can all stay stuck here, so they can control us, so they can control our souls and keep us dumbed down and veiled, so they could. That's the modus operandi. That's what Ra's warning about in all 106 sessions, that there was a group of people who came here with this specific knowledge to do that. And Ra is trying to tell the world in 1981 to 1984, so 40 years ago, trying to tell the world there was a concerted effort by evil people in the past to keep knowledge from you. And we're trying to wake you up to that knowledge and let you know about it. And that's what the LL Research wrote in the books, the Law of One, those 6 books, was the knowledge. And some other people writing things down, like God, Man, the Bible in flesh. It's underneath my camera right here, holding my camera up. And my book and other books that are out there. Carl Jung was talking about it. All these people in history that have been awake have been telling you there's a knowledge. The Tao Te Ching, the Book of the Way by Lao Tzu, telling you that there is a knowledge that you can achieve and find through meditation, through practice of balancing yourself and being a good person, that you access. Halls of Amenti, Akashic records that you can access, and it's the same universal knowledge that everyone accesses, and they don't want that knowledge of that being told to all of you, and they've tried to stifle that from the world. Let's continue with Ron.
In the event of mixed harvest, it is almost unknown for the majority of the harvest to be negative. When a planet moves strongly towards the negative, there is almost no opportunity for harvestable positive polarization. 65.14 Questioner, can you tell me why there is almost no opportunity in that case? Ra, the ability to polarize positively requires a certain degree of self-determination. 65.15 Questioner, then as these final days of the cycle transpire, if the harvest were to occur now, today, it would have a certain number harvested positively and negatively and a certain number of repeaters. I am going to assume that because of the catalyst which will be experienced between now and the actual harvesting time, these numbers of harvestable entities will increase.
Okay, so hold on. I want to address what Cassie said here, right? But I see the cycle of people finally understanding it again, like the old ways, that we are being reminded that their ways were more to this, that there was way more to this than existence than we have been told from history. Yes, so that's the beauty of the way things work, right? Is that the more they try to stifle this knowledge, the more that the chaos theory happens, and the knowledge will find a way to find its way back to the population. And that's what's happened. They tried to take all these books out of the Bible and kill everybody that had the knowledge, and the Essenes hid them in the Dead Sea area in caves. And the people at the time killed off all the Essenes, thinking they were going to shut them up. And those scrolls were gone off the face of the earth till 1948 when somebody found them, or 1947 when somebody found them. And then they're out there now for you to read. Other things were done the same way, where they tried to burn all of those scrolls and books and get rid of them, and people would steal them away. The Irish monks and the Scottish monks were doing that during the Renaissance. They were stealing away. The reason that we have all the history we have on the earth currently, the only reason we have all of the history currently that dates back prior to the Renaissance, which was in the 1500s, is because the Scottish and Irish monks went all over Europe and stole everything, the Bible, all of Homer's works, all the Iliad, all of the stuff that we currently have. They stole all that stuff and hid them away, and then recopied them and made more of the books, and then took all copies of them and took them to another church and said, you guys recopy these and take them out to other churches. And that's what they did to repopulate the earth with the history that we currently have. Or that would have all been gone too. So the universe finds a way, even though the harder they push, the more that good people find a way to get that information out to people. And that's what happens, right? So you're finding that resurgence again happening because it's time, right? In the Bible, it says the devil will be unleashed on the earth for a time. That tells you that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to that time of that chaos. So the Kali Yuga, which means time of troubles, the Ragnarok, which means the end times, all of those things have an ending. And that's when the devil's reign of chaos is no more. That has now happened and has occurred, and that time has ended. And evil people are unaware of it, and they're trying to have status quo and keep their control. And more people are exponentially waking up. And they're looking around, and some people are looking around confused, and they're going, what's going on here? And what am I missing? And other people are going, no, to the evil people. And that's because it is time for that to happen now. And some of us came here to help assist with that, and to help everybody to understand what's happening currently and why it's happening and where it's going. And you're going to see people like me popping up all over the world, because that's already happening if you're out there looking. Popping up all over the world to tell you what's happening in the next 25 years and how beautiful that is and how it's going to be really incredible, right? So let's see what else is, who's this? I have to go over here and see, right? I see more and more people opening up their minds, right? And having the, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense, right? Oh, I was trying to put that up on the screen, and I'm on the wrong screen to do that, right? Over here, it just says Facebook user, but it's Cassie who's saying that, right? And you guys see that if you're in the chat, right? Saying, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense of what I've learned or taught or I've been taught. let's see, was the truth of our history in our existence, of being the God self, right? And see that the whole, what's happening is people are starting, and this is what Cassie's getting to, people are starting to see the truth and see the truth through the many lives. Where people are starting to go, that doesn't feel right. You've been telling us a certain thing, and I don't think that's right. Right, like in the movie The Princess Bride, when that guy kept saying inconceivable, and finally, what's his name, Mandy Patinkin's character, who I can't remember his name right now, the character name, he looked at him at one point and goes, "I do not think that this means what you think it means." You keep using this word. I do not think that word means what you think it means, right? So I love that because then. What's his name? The Dread Pirate Roberts also said to him when he said inconceivable, he corrected him. No, improbable, not inconceivable, right? So what's happening is people are starting to look at the lies that are being told by politicians, say, by the legacy news media, by people on the internet, the stifling of words that we say by telling us that it's disinformation or misinformation or conspiracy theory, and they're trying to stifle us from saying that, putting us in Facebook jail or Google jail, or trying to deplatform people to control the narrative, because people are speaking the truth now, and they don't like it. That's why Tom McDonald said in I think it was in Fake Woke, the song, he said, "Hate speech is not speech that you hate." I think it was that song. It was one of the songs that he said, right? Yeah, inconceivable, right? He always said that with that lisp that he had, right? Inconceivable, right? In that movie. That movie was just on because it was the 40th anniversary. Last month was the 40th anniversary of that movie, of The Princess Bride, which was a great, funny comedy. It was hilarious. And Robin Wright, at the time, was Robin Wright Penn. At the time, Robin Wright was just on a television show on daytime television, talking about her movie that she produced and directed currently. And they mentioned that movie from 40 years ago, just the other day, a couple days ago. She was on, what was she on? Well, I think she's making the circuit, but still one of my favorite movies. Funny movie. Love that. Fezzik was Andre the Giant. Fezzik! I love that. And he was, oh my God, that movie was so fun. Right. And I love the where he what was it, the line from Indigo Montoya. Indigo. That was Mandy Patinkin's character. Indigo Montoya. Hello. What does he say? I am an Indigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. He kept saying that to him and said, "Will you stop saying that?" He kept saying it all over and over. Hello. I am Indigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. Remember that? Oh my God, that was one of the funniest lines. And he kept saying that over and over, and he got yelled at him, "Will you stop saying that?" Oh my God, that was funny. Okay, let's continue. Let's get back on point here, right? And let's continue with the law of one.
Generally speaking, not particularly with respect to this planet, but with respect to general experience, shall we say, in harvesting, how big an increase in harvestable entities can you logically assume will occur because of the catalyst that occurs in the final period such as this one? Or am I making a mistake in assuming that other planets have added catalyst at the end of a harvesting period when they have a mixed harvest? Ra, I am Ra. In the event of mixed harvest, there is nearly always disharmony and, therefore, added catalyst in the form of your so-called Earth changes. In this assumption you are correct. It is the Confederation's desire to serve those who may indeed seek more intensely because of this added catalyst. We do not choose to attempt to project the success of added numbers to the harvest, for this would not be appropriate. We are servants. If we are called, we shall serve with all our strength. To count the numbers is without virtue. 65.16 Questioner. Now the added catalyst at the end of the cycle is a function specifically of the orientation of the consciousness that inhabits the planet. The consciousness has provided the catalyst for itself in orienting its thinking in the way it has oriented it, thus acting upon itself the same as catalyst of bodily pain and disease act upon the single mind/body/spirit complex. I made this analogy once before but reiterate it at this time to clarify my own thinking in seeing the planetary entity as somewhat of a single entity made up of billions of mind/body/spirit complexes. Is my viewpoint correct? Ra, I am Ra. You are quite correct.
Yeah.
65.17 Questioner. Then we deal with an entity that has not yet formed a social memory but is yet an entity, just as one of us can be called a single entity. Can we continue this observation of the, shall I say, conglomerate entity through the galactic entity, or shall I say, small planetary system type of, let me try to phrase it this way. Could I look at a single sun in its planetary system as an entity and then look at a major galaxy with its billions of stars as an entity? Can I continue this extrapolation in this way? Ra, I am Ra. You can, but not within the framework of third density space/time. Let us attempt to speak upon this interesting subject.
Right, that's a really good question that he asked, because the consciousness of a solar system is less than it is of an individual world or people, because in the third dimensional concept, and I'll let Ra give his explanation. But however, third dimensional people, we have individual concepts of reality. We have individual personalities, and then as we start collectively, as we move into 4D, we start to become more mindful of one another, and we start to then going into 5D, start hearing one another, and start going as a collective. Raw is a collective consciousness in the 5D. Going into 6D is a collective consciousness, one entire species thinking as one person with one personality. The soul, the immortal soul, outside of the density, or outside of the dimension and the density, gravitates towards that. And so Ra is going to explain the difference between third dimensional and other dimensional, lower plane and otherwise. But you could, in some respects, I'll let Ra explain it, and then I'll go from there and extrapolate. Otherwise, I'm just going to be repeating. I'm going to be explaining it, and then Ra is going to explain it right away. So let's let Ra give the explanation, but you'll see what I'm saying. Where there is a differential between, you could look at a solar system as one entity, but it's different than the hive mind complex of third dimension, because it's in a different place, in a different vibration. But the collective consciousness of the galaxy is on a higher plane, 7 and 8D, is the collective consciousness of all of the souls that make up the galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, for instance, and has its own personality. But in a 3D perspective, you could go to the other end of the universe or the other end of the galaxy currently, and you would find other beings over there that you don't have any contact with, just like going from one island to the next or one continent to the next in the 3D. Because in 3D, this is the place of doing, where everybody is not already aware and starting to interact on a spiritual plane with one another. It's all on the physical plane. Let's hear Ra explain that, and then if you guys have any questions, I'll get into more details.
In your space/time, you and your peoples are the parents of that which is in the womb. The earth, as you call it, is ready to be born, and the delivery is not going smoothly. When this entity has become born, it will be instinct with the social memory complex of its parents, which have become fourth density positive. In this density there is a broader view. You may begin to see your relationship to the logos or sun with which you are most intimately associated. This is not the relationship of parent to child, but of creator, that is logos, to creator, that is the mind/body/spirit complex, as logos. When this realization occurs, you may then widen the field of eyeshot, if you will, infinitely recognizing parts of the logos throughout the one infinite creation and feeling, with the roots of mind informing the intuition, the parents aiding their plan.
So the harvest, to answer that question, right? What is the harvest in this sense? The harvest is the graduation from third dimensional beingness in this avatar to fourth dimension beingness. And so there's a cycle that a planetary body goes through in the first dimension, second dimension, third dimension. First dimensional beings are not self-aware. Second dimensional beings are not self-aware, but become self-aware. And then there's the harvest for those beings, but those are all organically individual as they become self-aware. In the third dimension, where we are here, it becomes more orchestrated in a timeline of a certain number of years. They're usually 75,000 years, 150,000 year cycles. That's why you have the big round and the small round in the Mayan and the Incan and the Aztec calendars, because they were kind of onto the 3,000 year cycle that of the universe and people graduating. So they were kind of onto the idea of the big round going by 3,500 years or 3,600 years, and then going like 18 of those, whatever that ends up being like 75,000 years. They were aware of those cycles, and then they were broke down into smaller cycles of things that were going on. They were far more advanced than we are now as far as being in tune with these cycles of graduation. So the harvest is a time when it's optimum for a lot of people to then be able to graduate and move to the next dimension or density and not have to recycle as a human being. Okay. And what has happened is that sometimes things interrupt that and people don't get to leave. And that's what's happened here because of the Orion Crusaders, the Anunnaki. They have not allowed people to make that timeline window. And so because of that, this planet got stuck. And because it gets stuck, when that happens after a certain amount of time, the higher self souls will call out for help that down here in 3D, somebody's stuck or the whole entire species is not graduating when they're supposed to. Then what happens is higher plane existent souls hear that call for help. And then those who are in service to others volunteer to then come down, because you have to keep the free will and the laws of the universe, the law of one, intact. So then you have people who are wanderers who then will volunteer to lower their vibration and be born and inserted into a human form and be veiled just like everybody else, and hope that they'll wake up and remember why they came to assist the people down here by raising their vibration to help raise everybody else's vibration, to then assist everybody without their knowledge so they can still have an organic experience and have a natural progression of when they become aware, self-aware, then when they become aware of the piercing of the veil, and without any intervention, like a duck blind coming down here, walking among the people, working around the people and helping them to ascend without them knowing about it, so that those people won't realize and all of a sudden go from it's not time for them because they've only been here 3 or 4 lifetimes, and then all of a sudden have the graduation when they didn't learn everything they were supposed to learn. So the prime directive is you can come down to help, but you have to come down in human form and be born here and veiled like everybody else. And that's what's currently happening on this earth, is that literally, if you look at between 1981 and 1984, when they were channeling this, the population of the planet was 2.7 billion humans. Currently, the population of the planet is 7.9 billion humans. 68% of the population of this earth currently are wanderers. They're not from here. Out of that 68% of the population that are wanderers, there's only 10% of the population who know they're wanderers. The other 58% of the population who are wanderers don't remember that they are currently, and they're starting to. Okay. So the harvest is a time period when naturally a large number of people can then leave if they want to. And that's been stifled in this particular place, and it's past overdue by a long time. But it's not really bad. The people of Mars were stuck for 125,000 years. The people of Moldek were stuck for 160,000 years before anybody even heard that they were stuck. People here have only been stuck for about 78,000 years, and people heard about it about 50,000 years after they got stuck. So truly, the people on this earth haven't been as stuck as the people on Mars were. And the people from Mars and Moldek are also making up the population of this earth currently, but not as wanderers, as people that have come through to finish their life expectancy. So the indigenous population to earth is only about 18% of the actual population that's on this earth right now are actually from here, grew up here as 1D, 2D, started their soul's life on this earth. Everybody else is from another planet. But that's normal. That happens all the time in the way things work in third dimension. Whatever the closest planet is to wherever you are, you become a third dimensional being. If you happen to grow up on a planet that has 1D, 2D, and then 3D, like this one does, then you can be a second dimensional planet, cat, dog, bird, something, become self-aware, and then be born a human the next lifetime. But that doesn't always happen. Sometimes there's planets that don't have any third dimensional life on it that have first and second, and then they have to go to another planet. They just don't remember it because when they become self-aware and they move there, they get veiled and they have no memory that they were on a different planet. And so each lifetime to lifetime, that's why the veiling works, because third dimensional life isn't supposed to be on this planet anymore. It's supposed to be 1D, 2D, 4D, and 8D. And currently we're holding 3D as we're moving everybody into 4D, right? So once everybody gets moved into 4D, there won't be any more 3D life here. And the 2D life, when they grow up, they'll have to go to another planet in another solar system to be born there to be 3D. They won't be on this Earth because they have to be 4D to come back. Do you see? That might be confusing for some of you. You might not be ready for that, right? So you've had the talk, question mark, Risen Nation says, with him up there. Cool. It sounds like it all happened very cool. I'm not sure if you're referring to me or something else that somebody else said. Right. So let's see what else. And I have to figure out who's talking because I don't know who's talking because I'm in the studio. When folks vibrate at a high level, it's like witnessing a God. Well, from the viewpoint of 3D, just the knowledge of 4D, 5D seems godlike to you know what I mean? But it's not really. It's information that everybody can gain. God's so much higher than that. You'd be like, you'd freak out just going to 6D and 7D. What is there if somebody were to come here and talk about it, right? So you've had to talk with him up there. Cool. Okay. So yes and no, right? What I caught you saying about a bit there, it seems like you've been witness, right? 5G, right? Yeah. So yeah, poor Mars. Well, when you unlock, I'm talking to Risen Nation over on YouTube. When you unlock the access, you become unveiled. I'm completely unveiled. Okay. And that's really freaky. It's hard for people to get if they're still veiled when I say that. So I didn't talk about it most of my life and kept it from people because it wasn't time for me to let people know about it. And so people go, oh, so you're unveiled. That means you can talk to God right now. Well, you can too. You just don't know that you do it. Or unless you're like praying or something. And then you're like, I'm talking to God, but he's not answering me. He actually is. You just aren't aware of it because you're not supposed to be aware of it yet. But you're supposed to expand your consciousness to know that I'm praying to something that there is something that's there. It's not that, white guy that looks like me wearing a toga sitting on a mountaintop playing chess with some red pitchfork guy with a tail and a goatee and horns that are sitting there playing chess or checkers over the human race. That's just bullshit that was made up. Okay. However, from the low standpoint of the ego, that's what's happening. From the ego, the struggle that's going on within you, light and darkness, that's what's happening. But in the reality scope of the universe, that's not happening. But it needs to be that way down here so that we can then grow. So as you pierce the veiling and you start being able to access the halls of Amente, the Akashic records, however you know that information, and then you start getting the information coming into you from your higher self of what's going on in this world, what's going on in the galaxy, or what's going on in the solar system, the galaxy, and what it's all about. To people that are down here, it sounds like you're talking to God, but you're still not talking to God directly. But in all aspects of everything, you actually are, because here's a little 7D and 8D knowledge, okay? That you may not even be ready for. Some of you out there are going to go, okay, now you lost me. Now I think you're just making shit up. Okay. Let me tell you what this place is. This place is a daydream in the mind of the creator. You, me, and all of this is a simulation We're not real. Even your immortal soul is not real. Your immortal soul is a construct that you're pretending is separate from yourself. We are all the creator of the universe. This is all happening in our mind. And we have created this in a scenario like a daydream to imagine what it's like to be alive and living as a mortal flesh body. Not only are we having that illusionary creation, but we've also created how that is connected to all the way back to source. From nothingness all the way back to source, we created that entire endeavor for us to go through so that we can imagine every possible scenario of how we became and what we are becoming as the creator of this universe. That's as simply as I can give you what is actually happening here. And that, if you're not ready for it, is going to sound like I just made some shit up. But that's as best as I can describe to you in third dimensional verbiage, the concept of what's happening here. So normally that's not what we answer with, like what Eckhart Tolle said when someone said, what is the function of the 3D of this 3D reality? And he said, his answer was, God is becoming conscious of himself in this place. That's his basic information that can be told of the function of third dimensional reality. I just gave you the same description from a 5D, 6D perspective, okay, from a higher vibration. On third dimensional vibration, what is happening here? God is becoming conscious of himself in this place that he created through all of us. Do you understand that? Do you understand that? So what is it you're saying? Risen said, I've seen what everyone is doing as proof of what's been more recently perceived. Been through what you just spoke of relevantly. What is that? Murano? I don't understand what that word is. People keep talking, so I'm trying to read it, and the screen is scrolling up on me, right? So, and I don't know who's talking over on Facebook because I'm in the studio and I have to go back to Facebook to find out what it is you're saying. And then somebody's messaging me and it's closing my window and getting everything all out of craziness. All right. So, you have to realize that, and now you guys are you guys answering each other? Or are you talking to me over here? So I had to come back over here to find out who's talking, to find out what's going on, right? Oh, the never-ending story. Now that was a good storyline. So you have to realize that the expansion of your consciousness, as you access this information, it is universal. So in universal enlightenment is universal. If you're in service to self, you gain a certain knowledge. If you're in service to others, if you're in service to self, you get a certain knowledge that is all the evil knowledge of self-serving. If you're in service to others, you get the information that you can only access when you're in service to others. There's two avenues of information that you gain. One is self-serving information and how to manipulate people, control people, and all of this down here. And the other is spiritual information that you gain. You can't trick the universe and pretend that I want to know what that knowledge is that's in service to others, but I'm truly in service to self. You can't trick the universe. You can trick people in 3D, but you can't trick the universe. So you only gain one of the knowledges or the other. And no, that's okay. I was just trying to figure out what you guys were talking about. Rebecca said, sorry, Leo. I was just trying to figure out if you were talking to me and asking a question or if you were talking to each other. I'm all right with you talking to each other. I just needed to find out if I needed to answer what you were saying if you were talking to me. So you have to realize that you gain knowledge depending on your path. And then that unlocks more and more knowledge. The more you become spiritual, the more you will unlock. and the more knowledge that you'll have. And then that just continues. You keep getting more downloads, you keep getting more knowledge as you ascend. And then your IQ goes up, you get smarter, you get wiser, you know what's going on more, and you become unveiled. And once you become unveiled, then you are not fooled by anything that goes on down here at all, because you actually understand the ecosystem that is happening in this third dimensional reality, the yin and the yang being the Vesica Pisces. That is the natural balance, and how beautiful this balance is of light and darkness, masculine and feminine, good and evil, and that it's necessary of what's going on. And then it becomes very simple. That's when, like the story of Neo, when he wakes up in the Matrix and he sees the ones and zeros and ones. You don't see the binary code from a computer program, but you see the spirals, you see the Vesica Pisces, you see the yin and the yang, you understand the Fibonacci sequence, you understand the golden mean ratio. That's why the opening video for this show has that mathematical equation and visuals for you to see during that song. So if you're listening to it on the MP3 broadcast, you just hear the music. If you're watching the video, I show you those visuals, whether you're aware of it or not. If you see those visuals, it's getting into your psyche through osmosis. And at some point during the conversation, it might trigger, or some point in your evolution, it might trigger. I remember that because there's a picture of a radial image of a human brain cell and a radial image of the universe, and they're identical, except for the brain cell is less rudimentary than the universe, but they're identical. So our brain cell, one brain cell, is identical to the entire universe. So that's supposed to ponder in you, what is the correlation when you overlap them? The universe has billions more ganglia cells and neural pathways than our brain cell does. As above, so below. As within, so without. As below, so above. So we were created in the image of God. So our brain cell is exactly the same makeup as the universe. So is the universe that we're in, is that one brain cell in the mind of the creator? Why is it that they're so identical? And then when you see the correlation, which I'm writing about in my current book, the one that I have out now, which I'll do a commercial for here in a second. I'm going to pop it up on the screen and let you guys see the commercial for it again. That I mentioned it in there about the tree of life. And I'm giving you more details about that in the second book that I'm currently writing that'll be out in a few years. That the tree of life is that neural network, that neural pathway that our brain cell has and that the universe has. And that literally the ancients knew about it. Yggdrasil, the tree of life. All the tree of life from all of the cultures, the Hebrew tree of life, the Asian tree of life, the Egyptian tree of life, every culture had they had the knowledge of the tree of life. Why is it in the Viking pantheon do they have the tree of life with 7 worlds, 7 chakras, the rainbow bridge that connects the Midgard, Middle Earth, third dimension, with Asgard, the heaven, the crown chakra? Why is that a rainbow, color of all the chakras in order? And what does the snake have to do with wrapped around the tree of life, Kundalini energy? And what does the eagle standing on the tree branch with standing on its shoulder, a crow, have to do with illumination and knowledge? How did those people know about that if they were just cloth-wearing Vikings that were marauding and killing and raping and pillaging? How could they know all of that information and draw that up in their concept identical to the way that the Hebrews did, which was not drawn up exactly like they did, but the Hebrews have 10. Well, that's completely different then. No, the Hebrews added some subcategories that the Vikings also have added with Bifrost, the rainbow bridge, the snake, and the bird. Okay? But they don't have it as a circle with a name like the Hebrews do, or the Asians. But if you're a theologian, a true theologian like myself, and you've studied religion your entire life, you see the correlation between all of these trees of life that all of these people know about. And then people naturally will then say, well, they all must have copied off of one another. So we need to find who the oldest one was. And that's where I talk about where people just spend all their life ignoring the message that all of them are telling you because they're looking for who has the oldest version of it. You can spend your entire life continuing to look for the oldest version, or you can see what they all have in common and what's the message they're all trying to tell you. They don't want you to see that. There's nothing to see here. These are not the droids you're looking for, and they Jedi mind trick you. You got to keep looking for an older scroll that they all copied from, obviously, instead of reading what they were trying to tell you, that they all had the same. Who cares if they copied it off of one another? They all have different versions of it. But what is it that they have a version of? That's more important than who wrote the first one, because they all have the same one. Well, obviously, they all must have just known each other and they all copied each other. So somebody made that up somewhere and the whole thing's invented and it's all fake. That's what people in 3D want you to believe to keep you from looking at what they were saying. That's why my book is called The Reality About Reality, Returning to the Old Ways, because that's what that's about. So let me go ahead and play my commercial for you for my book, right? Let me play the commercial one more time.
What is the reality about reality? Returning to the old ways. It is a comprehensive book about what is really going on here on this planet. It talks about the true spirituality that the controllers who think they own this planet have been keeping from you for thousands of years. It explains to you the knowledge that you gain from the universe itself when you live the way the prophets of the world throughout time told us how to live. Eat right, meditate, take care of yourself, treat others right. All the things they originally told us to do, but the controllers have removed from right in front of our eyes. The way to ascend to heaven. The reality about reality. Returning to the old ways. On sale worldwide online now.
Okay, so literally, the knowledge is there and has been, and there's been people throughout all of time. I mean, Lao Tzu and the Buddha happened between 604 BCE and 635 BCE, somewhere right in that 35-year time period. Both of those people in China alone talked about the exact same information that the Jesus character spoke about 600 years later, 630 years later, before he died. So the same information. So some people said, well, then Jesus must have not have been teaching anything other than what he may have read. Well, that the Tao Te Ching hadn't been written yet. The Tao Te Ching is more contemporary from what Lao Tzu said back then. So there wasn't books and scrolls that we're aware of except for the knowledge. So there's some people say Jesus went to the East and learned in that time period when he disappeared before he returned at 30 years of age. Okay. So there's a possibility that he went and learned these things and came back. In the third dimensional ideology, they want you to believe that so that you don't in any way think that Jesus was talking from God, that he was just regurgitating what he had learned from moving to the East. And that's what they want you to believe about everything. Don't bother with the idea that all these cultures who they first claim never had any contact with each other throughout time, yet all have the same message. And when people like me point that out, they go, well, then obviously they must have had contact with each other and just copied off of each other's homework. So first they'll tell you they never spoke to one another at all in all of these cultures because they were too primitive, until you point out that they all are talking about the same thing. And then they go, well, they must have been trading with one another. And they just copied each other's book. That's all. And so now they spend all their time and money telling you that they were all too primitive to know anything and they never had contact with each other until you realize that they all had the same knowledge. And then they go, they all talk to each other. They just copied. Doesn't mean anything. Do you see how they just change their story to fit the narrative when you start learning knowledge? And then that changes as well when you say, well, they all have a different version of it, but they all are telling the same story. Yeah, those are all invented anyways. It's all fake. None of those are true. Not even the oldest one is true. Google that. What's the creation story? Pick a religion, and they'll tell you the creation myth. Not true. So there is no God. because they're secularists. There is no God. There is no creation. There is no any of all those Bibles are fake, and they were all done. And now they're accusing people of doing what they do. Those were all just invented to control people, to keep them in line, to make money off of them. They're telling you who they are and what their modus operandi is, to explain a knowledge that they don't want you looking into anyways as being fake and made up and has nothing to do with anything. Do you see? It's all the knowledge of the pineal gland, the pine cone that you see the Anunnaki holding on to. That's not them giving you knowledge. That's them controlling you with their Jedi mind trick. These are not the droids you're looking for. You do not need to see their identification. They can go about their business. Move along. Move along. Okay? And the knowledge of how to do all that is what's in their little scrolls and in that little handbag that they're carrying. How to create this kind of society, how to make the caste system, how to filter all money up to them and all control of everything and all property all up to them, and how to keep you not knowing about it. That is the true origin. That's why my book is entitled The Reality About Reality, Returning to the Old Ways. Okay, so let me see what you're saying here, right? You have folds in your brain. I don't even know who's saying this because I'm over here in the studio. Who's saying that? Let me go over here. That's Karen. Welcome, Karen. I didn't realize you had popped in. Karen said you have folds in your brain like different universes inside. Like I think our brain goes on and on, always expanding as one evolves. I read this like a supercomputer. Well, yes. It's also, and I think that book is also over here, so I can't show it to you, underneath the camera. Actually, I don't know where it is now. It's over there somewhere. I have the Holographic Universe, which was written, started the book starts like in the 1800s and comes through the entire progression of the holographic universe, which was a theory that now science is going, wow, there's some stuff in the universe that's actually holographic. That's kind of freaky. That part of this universe is like our AIs, like our computer programs, and it's scaring science because what if this is all a simulation? Oh, you mean a hologram inside the mind of the creator? Oh no, because there is no God, so it can't be that, right? So they realized when they did certain things in science, I'm not going to get too involved in the book, but they realized that our brain, there's no one place. They can't like remove this part of my brain and have me forget something. That literally, like a hologram, all of our memories are our entire brain. They're realizing that the universe is the same way. So as our expansion of our consciousness, Karen, getting on to what you're saying, as we evolve, and that's how we become smarter, because our brain evolves and gets bigger and smarter. We don't grow a bigger, fatter brain. We kind of do. The ganglia cells, the glia cells in our brain multiply when you become smarter, and then your brain tissue starts to multiply and become denser and get larger as well. So that's why when we say, when we have a bigger brain, that means we're smarter. Not necessarily, but you start accessing more parts of the brain that we don't actually access. When people say we only use 10% of the brain, that's if you're an 11-year-old child, in your mentality, your maturity level, you're only using about 10% of your brain. As you become wiser and expand your consciousness, you start accessing other parts of your brain. You start using it now more and more and more and more. So our brains do evolve, and our access in our brains evolve as we spiritually become unveiled. We gain more access to more knowledge, which freaks some people out, right? Sherry, I didn't see you were here either, so welcome. I don't know how long you've been here. It's the first time I noticed that you said something. I understand that how to change what's been done in this illusion, right? So our focus determines our reality. So collectively, I was just talking to Cassie about that, and I was talking to somebody else about that too. Science has now proven that if you take a light bulb, I have lights on right now. If I were to film in slow motion, which means firing off hundreds of frames per second, and then play it back for you, because there's so many frames playing back. If I play it back at normal speed, then it seems that I'm moving in slow motion. Okay, what'll happen is you'll notice that the light bulbs in here are flickering. They're turning off and turning back on. turning off and turning back on. But they do it so fast, we don't perceive it with these eyes that we have, and we just see a light being on the entire time. But the light's actually going off and on like 500 times a second or 300 times a second. Science has now realized that this reality is turning off and turning back on like 100,000 times per second. And they've actually observed that all of it reality winks off and then winks back on like 100,000 times every single second. Okay. So they're starting to get onto the idea that it's being recreated by all of us holding on to the reality. We are co-creators creating this reality every second by our observation, our thought process of I'm in a house and there's this many rooms is keeping the house and these rooms and this reality. I believe I'm on a planet. I believe I'm in America. I believe I'm in California. I believe I'm on the Earth. I believe the Earth is orbiting the sun. I believe there's other planets that we have observed in the solar system. I look up into space and I see all of those galaxies and universes up in space. And every time you look up into space, you see them that are up there, and then you start charting them, and you start realizing that they're moving along while we're moving along and while everything's moving along. And then when you tell other people that and they look up, that belief in that happening is creating it and keeping it exactly the way we see it. So if everybody says, this is where going back, here's my minister, Jesus telling you in the Bible, if you had just the amount of one mustard seed of faith, you could literally move mountains. One mustard seed, if you take Grey Poupon, 1 teaspoon of Grey Poupon and put it in your mouth, you're eating like 1,000 mustard seeds or more. That's how small a mustard seed is. Okay? So he said literally, use that word, literally move mountains. So that means that we could change the face of our landscape if we wanted to. If we all realized that we have the ability to do so, and we wanted to move Mount Ararat from Turkey to the United States instantaneously, it would become there, and reality would shift, and everybody would believe that Mount Ararat is no longer in Turkey. It is now in Washington State. But everybody would have to agree to that for it to happen. Because there's people over in Turkey that are like, nope, that's our mountain. It's right there. Do you see? So we're creating and co-creating everything that's happening. And what we're in charge of is ourself, firstly. So that's why we teach you that your focus determines your reality. Okay? So what you want to manifest, and this is why we teach, and I've been teaching this for 35 years, dream walking and astral projection, to show you that a dream, a night dream, a daydream, I talked about this last week, a night dream and a daydream, okay, and remote viewing or astral projecting is no different than anything else. And when you realize I can instantaneously go from here to be viewing the Great Wall of China by, in my mind, envisioning being there, and then people who are really good at that, they can write a note and set it there, and you can read that note. You're literally leaving your body while you're in your body, and you're traveling there, and you're reading the note, and you're telling, and you're writing down what the note says. And that CIA and people have tested this. The more you do it, the better you get at that. So you can do that instantaneously. Okay? So once you learn those things, that you can astral project, you can move around, you can control your dreams without waking up, you can have a daydream, and then you realize that all of those are the same, then we progress you into realizing that the only difference between what you're experiencing in this flesh body and a daydream, a night dream, or astral projection is your perspective of what you think is happening. Because when you're outside of the body in one of those places, you can instantaneously travel from one place to another or move something with your mind, because your manifestation, you're outside of time, happens instantaneously. When you're here, you're in the place of doing in the third dimension where there's a separation of past, present, and future. So for you to manifest something, it takes time for that manifestation to occur from the origin of you wanting it to happen. But when you're outside of this illusion, in a daydream or a night dream or astral projecting, you can manifest something instantaneously because you're no longer in the place of time. That's the only difference between those realities is perspective. Here is the place of doing, so therefore there is time. Outside of this place, there is no time. And manifestation is right now. So it takes time for you to manifest something into your life. But if you think about it every day and you take steps for it, it's going to happen. And people go, well, then that just means that you're doing it. Because we're in the place of doing. So you are doing it here. So you have to be patient with manifestation in this place because it takes time. Your mind doesn't like that concept because in your mind, you can just manifest shit because that's outside of time. And so you're like, how come it takes so much time here? Because this is the place of doing. I can't make these float, but I can pick them up and make them float. But if I'm outside of this place, I can just manifest them and make them float around because that's outside of the place of doing. The third ray chakra, the yellow ray chakra. This is a yellow ray sun. This is the third planet from that third star, the yellow ray sun. It's the place of doing. That's why people say, what do you do here? I have things to do. What do you do for a living? What do I do? Because this is the place of doing. That's why you have to manifest things in time. Do you understand that? Isn't that crazy? So we're supposed to progress to the realization that all of those things are the real reality and this is the dream. And that helps you to then start unlocking the knowledge and manifesting you in a higher plane and realizing that that's where you actually are, not here. And as you do that, you're now ascending. And when you get far enough into that, you're supposed to have the ability to, now I can leave when I want to because I've learned all the things down here I was supposed to learn, and I know that I'm an immortal being. Except on this planet, which is a planet that got stuck by people who are keeping it stuck and keeping you from learning that and realizing that so that you can't get out of here and you just keep living until you're old and you're tired now. Because you're like, I have this feeling that we've been doing this over and over and over and over for thousands and thousands of years. I'm tired and I want to go home and this isn't it. Because even the souls here have been doing this so long that they're tired now. Because it's almost at the end. And not meaning that we're all going to die. Because everybody who's here, whether you know this or not, I said this last week, everyone who is here on this earth volunteered to go through this. Because what's happening here and being stuck this long and then having everybody have the opportunity at one time to wake up and shift automatically into 4D has only happened one other time in the Milky Way galaxy. This will be the second time because it's never allowed to go on this long to have people stuck. It's always fixed, and then people can graduate whenever they want, and the natural progression of how things work in 3D works. Every now and then, because we're creative as God, we decide to have a scenario that's really, 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 I'll say that about 10 times, hard. And that is, let's get billions of people stuck for hundreds of thousands of years, and instead of fixing it the normal way, let's have them all shift into 4D on the fly without their knowledge. Some of you aren't going to know it when it happens. It's already happening. And some people aren't aware of that it's happening, the shift. Other people are like, there's this crazy shift that's happening in the world and I'm not sure what it is. It's because the entire species is moving from 3D into 4D. Because when we've done it before, it's really, really beautiful. And it's very rare, and that we're doing it because we're upgrading the scenario. Instead of having people go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 whenever they want during a harvest, we came up with a new scenario, which is this one, and we're trying it out in different places. I'm giving you guys some information that has not been told very much on this earth, but it is what's happening here. We came up with a possible evolution of the natural course of things to make it more difficult for those people who want to go through that and have everybody shift at one time without freaking anybody out. So everybody who is capable of making the shift can make the shift, and those who aren't will, when their life ends, they'll just be moved to a third dimensional planet somewhere else, be revealed, be born again, and they'll never even know they were here. Okay, but everybody else is just going to shift, and some people aren't even going to know. It's just going to, all of a sudden, things are going to get better on the planet, and evil people aren't going to be in charge anymore, and everyone's going to go, fuck, thank God we changed that. And they're not going to realize they just shifted from 3D into 4D until they wake up enough to go, what? We just shifted from 3D into 4D as an entire species. That's what's actually happening here. And people are unaware of that. And most of you are supposed to know it. And we started this scenario and everybody got stuck, and it didn't happen naturally. So we had to bring some of us here to help. And then it got really hard, and we had to bring more people here to help. And then we said, well, let's see how far the scenario goes. Let it play out naturally, but let people go there, and let's see. We made this one hard. So we literally went from 2.7 billion people 40 years ago to 7.9 billion people in 40 years because of how hard they were stuck, and how hard this place was, and how hard it was for wanderers who got here and also got stuck. It was done so hard that wanderers lost their way and got stuck here. Billions of them. Okay? And literally, we had to bring more and more and more. And then we said, why don't we do it and have everybody shift all at once? This is the new way that our creator is thinking of having this option for people to do. Okay? And it was done once before in this universe, or in this galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, and now's the second time. So everybody who's higher vibration in this galaxy is sitting around eating popcorn, looking at the earth like a TV show. And some people are catching on to that. I wonder if there's people out there that are watching us like a TV show. There are trillions of souls watching this planet like a TV show because they've never gone through this, and they don't know if they have the gumption, the balls to do it. Not a joke. So what's happening here is the most difficult thing that literally only in one other time happened. And that's why you had to have the Jesus character come 12 times throughout time, coming in different guises, and people are getting on to that. They've already proven 7, but there's 12. And the last time was the name Jesus was used. Okay? So that had to happen to help. And everybody else had to come in here to do what they were doing to help, so that we could get all this done the way it's getting done. And we're coming down to the end of it. And people are really tired, and they're scared, and they don't know what to do. And people like me are going, it's okay. We're going to be okay. We're close. We're within 50 years of everybody shifting, 25 if we can do it. We were pushing for 2030. That still might happen. 5 years, right? Things are already looking up around the world where evil people are losing their control of governments, and the people are fighting back, and they're in their death throes, fighting as hard as they can to keep control. Okay. Rebecca says, have you ever been somewhere that you've been, but you haven't? I do that constantly with a picture, visiting a place that I know that I've been there. Yeah, no, that happens. You could be going through time and seeing yourself there from before. Or you could be, deja vus are a sign of piercing the veil. But sometimes you will look at a photo and you don't realize you're looking at a photo of yourself from the 1800s, or you were the photographer, and you're like, why does that look familiar? I've been there. Or you go somewhere and they're like, this is a house from the 1800s, and you walk in the house, you're like, I know this place. I know every room. I can tell you where all the rooms are. Why do I know this? Because you were in that house in the 1800s. Were you the owner of it? You have to figure that out. Were you a guest there? Were you a servant there? Did you visit that particular historical site 50 years ago as another person that drove in to see that house? What was your origin? Those things are done to you to expand your consciousness so that you become aware of those. And then you're supposed to at some point figure out what's my connection? Because obviously it's through time, not just from here, but my soul was there. And you start to look at that. And that's how it kind of leads to past life. And you start seeing your past lives and you start realizing that kind of stuff, right? So what Sherry said, thank you so much for all that you're saying. It has given me massive feels, right? So it's what I'm saying is supposed to be activating you in some way. That's why I'm doing that, to get you guys activated. I do that all the time. What's Cassie saying here? Cassie said, you have to either, drive how awake the writer was. Oh, you guys are talking amongst yourself. I'm sorry. You're actually answering somebody else. You and Celeste are talking, so you weren't talking to me. Okay. So yeah, so that's what I'm here to do, right? I do this, and I use the law of one, and I talk, and now I'm transitioning into assisting you guys more. So for anybody out there who's interested, on Wednesdays at 3 p.m. West Coast America time, that's GMT minus 7, 6 p.m. East Coast America time, or East Coast Northern Hemisphere, North American continent. I do a Zoom call that's off air, where you guys can come in and just ask me any questions about spirituality, and then I'll answer them. Take the time to answer you individually. But I do it also in here, and I'll ask questions, but I also use the law of one to show you guys what's going on and what, and what everything is about. But there I don't talk about just the law of one. I'll talk about everything spiritual and help you guys to understand what's happening around the world and answer your direct questions, because I will eventually be speaking in front of people. And that's where, I don't promote my book like I do here. Here I give you commercials for my book and tell you to buy my book. There I don't do that. I just give you the answers to whatever that you are asking. And that way, if you have questions that you won't ask in public, I'm giving you a venue to where I'm not recording it. It's not live, and give you the opportunity, because eventually I'm going to start doing that live. And then people are going to be asking questions, and I'll be answering that. So I'm basically doing what a medium does without giving you love connections and that kind of stuff. I'm just telling you what's going on in the universe. All right, so let's continue. Let me see how much time we have left here. We only have 4 minutes left of the law of one. Let's see how far we can get, because I got to get off here in about 10 or 15 minutes.
And it's in evolution and reaches vast and unknown in the creation. For this process occurs many, many times in the evolution of the creation as a whole. 65.18 Questioner. The wanderer goes through the forgetting process. You mentioned that those who have both third and fourth density bodies activated now do not have...
Paulie, if you want to... Cassie, do me a favor. If you're not in the Law of One chat on Messenger, we can get you into the Law of One chat on Messenger, and then I post the Zoom call in there on the Law of One class chat on Messenger for everybody currently. Once I go public and do that for the public, I'll start doing it on my Facebook page for anybody that wants to in public do that, and I'll probably post it on Orion Rising, the page, on my page. But for right now, I'm just doing it for the people that come from the Law of One that want to ask questions. So if you're not already in the Law of One class chat on Messenger, Cassie is an admin in there, and I think Penny or Denise as well that's here. But they can get you into that class chat, and then you can join the conversations that we have that go all day and all night. From around the world, where we talk about everything spiritual and the Law of One and things like that. And then because Cassie's also, when she feels better right now, she's going through COVID and a few other things. So she's feeling kind of down. She's going to be also having a Zoom class where she's going to be leading you guys in different things. Like she was talking about maybe doing chakra alignments and things like that, and evolving those things into different aspects of teaching and guiding people in spirituality. But she's not, she usually does, she was going to do it on Sunday, but she's not feeling up to it this week. Again, she's been having problems for like a month. I was going through the same thing for a month and just got over it last week. She's going through it now. And she's over in Montana, and it's just, living our lives around the world. We're all getting COVID. We're all getting the flu. We're all getting crap now. So she's dealing with that. I think she had walking pneumonia or something. Somebody just said walking pneumonia. No, that was my ex-wife. I apologize. Who had walking pneumonia. But she's going to be going forward doing that as well on a different day. So if you want, she can get you into that. And then on Wednesday, I'll give you the link for the Zoom meeting, and you'll see it there. And then all you have to do is log into Zoom and then type in the meeting name and password. And then you can come in, and literally I just sit there, and you just hit the button to raise your hand, because there's a button that you press that puts your little hand up. And then if I don't see it, somebody will tell me, because if I'm talking directly to the camera, sometimes I miss that. And then you can ask a question, whatever it is, and I'll answer you. And we take questions, and however many people are there, and we hope to get everybody's stuff. And I'll do about 3 hours then, like I do here. I try to do about 3 hours to answer as many questions as I can for you. But I also work with you guys in the chat, and you can ask questions in the chat, and you'll see people in there that'll answer. Stephanie's and Cassie and anybody else that Penny and Denise, and sometimes Celeste is in there, and that can answer other questions that you have in spirituality, that you can just ask any time of the day or night, and somebody will answer you if there's anyone in there. Even Rick Hawkeye, if he happens to be in there, everybody, or Peter Coyle, who was here earlier from Ireland, they'll answer what they can for you around the clock. And then you can also talk to us individually and work with us individually, and we're helping. And right now we're not charging anybody for any of this stuff. We're just doing it for free. And eventually you're going to see us moving into a platform where we're going to be charging people for this information. So we're giving you guys out there in the world, if you guys want to get a lot of information about spirituality for free, right now is a really good time to do it, because we're working with you guys for free. But we're going to be moving into going global. And when we start doing that, we're going to start, going to arenas to be able to answer questions for people at like hotels and things, where people are going to have questions, and they're going to have to pay to come in and ask questions. Right now, we're doing it individually for people who want to, because we know there's a certain group. I'm not going to get too far involved in that, but there's a certain group of people who are needing this information now, because you guys are going to be also teaching people out there in the world. So we're trying to wake up the lions, the wanderers, to then let you guys go out and do what we're doing here on your own. Some of you were beacons for, and pulling you in ahead of time to help you wake up, and you already know it. And that's why you're drawn to either me or other people like me already, because there's a group of us around the world that are drawing you guys in, men and women from all over the world, that we're drawing you guys in to help activate you, to wake you up. And we're doing it online and around the world for free, because we're trying to exponentially wake up and change the course of history here, and rewrite the history and change this world. And eventually there's going to be so many people that are going to be asking questions that it's going to take up so much of our time that we're going to have to quit our jobs, our day jobs, and actually get paid some way to survive on this planet until we make everything free. So we're going to have to start charging people money to ask us questions. Right? Okay, let me continue with the law of one. So I think you have Cassie or somebody get you into that group. Anybody that wants to get in there, have you guys get in there. In fact, I'm going to stop here. There's 4 minutes left. Maybe I'll just let it play, because I'm going to have to get off here. It's 6:15. I'm going to have to get off here. We'll pick it up here next week. I'll back up a few questions and we'll pick it up there, because I'm going to have to get Mom in the shower and get dinner for her and I. But for anybody that's interested to get in the chat, Rebecca, if you want to get into the Law of One chat, have Cassie send you an invite, or I can do that, so you can be in there and talk. And then if you have questions, you can do the same thing and show up on Wednesday. And like I said, the same thing. We're giving this out. Those of you who are around the world, if you're listening on the MP3 broadcast or on one of the other channels, and I happen to not be talking to you right now, and you want to get a hold of me, send me an email from whatever. If you're on YouTube, you can contact me and make a there on YouTube. Instagram, you can do the same thing. And if you're listening on the MP3 broadcast around the world, you can still contact me. If you're on some other app, you'll have to go to Podbean. You can go to www.orionrising.podbean.com, and you can send a message to me there at that platform, and that will get to me. If not, you can send it to my email, which is I'll tell it to you, and you can write it down. You can email me, and then I can get in contact. So if you can't get me on Facebook because you don't like Facebook and you don't like Messenger, you can't get me on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube because you're somewhere in the world where you don't have those platforms, but you have an email. You can email me at Olaf, which is spelled OLAFF, 2 Fs, at yahoo.com. Okay. And you can email me and then just put in the description, that you want to talk to me about spirituality, or I watched your podcast or something like that to get my attention, because I get hundreds of emails a day in there, but I do check it every day. And then if you want to work with me, I can work with you individually, or we can text or whatever you need to do. If you have specific questions for me, I can email back you the answer. That's what I do, right? So if you're listening around the world on some other platform, because I'm listened to in over 70 countries, and I'm aware of that, and some of you can't contact me because you're on an app that I have no idea how my podcast got there, because one of you copied my RSS number. And if you are listening to me somewhere, but it's not the app that you like to get your podcast on, you can go to Podbean, www.orionrising.podbean.com, and that'll take you to that website where my podcast, the MP3 file, goes out to, and that I pay them money. So there's an RSS number there that you can copy, go back to your app, wherever you listen to your podcast. If I'm not already there, if Orion Rising is not already on that app, and you happen to be listening to me like on Apple Podcast or somewhere else, but it's not where you normally listen, you can go to your app, and your app, whoever created that, doesn't want you to go to another app to listen to your podcast. So they're going to want to and allow you to copy my RSS number and paste it into that app. And all of my episodes, all 400 and wherever I'm at now, 470 episodes, 480 episodes from Podbean, will automatically download onto that app for you to have access to. And you can listen to every podcast I've ever published MP3 file wise on the planet. Okay. Otherwise, wherever you listen to an MP3 file I'm already on there. So you can listen to the non-visual, it's all MP3. But you can still listen to everything that I've ever done. And you trust me, there isn't a country except for like maybe China, North Korea, and maybe Russia, because I've already had people in Russia actually listen to it too. But places where this kind of content is banned, you won't be able to listen to it because your government won't want you hearing this. But otherwise, it's in the rest of the free world, which is everywhere. My book is also available. So let me do a commercial for my book one last time here. I'll put it up on the screen. And then I'm going to go after that. So you guys can listen to that, and then I'll sign off. Okay.
What is the reality about reality? Returning to the old ways. It is a comprehensive book about what is really going on here on this planet. It talks about the true spirituality that the controllers who think they own this planet have been keeping from you for thousands of years. It explains to you the knowledge that you gain from the universe itself when you live the way the prophets of the world throughout time told us how to live. Eat right, meditate, take care of yourself, treat others right. All the things they originally told us to do, but the controllers have removed from right in front of our eyes. The way to ascend to heaven. The reality about reality. Returning to the old ways. On sale worldwide online now.
All right, guys. I love you guys. I will see you guys either in the chat, or I'll see you guys on Wednesday, or those of you around the world, you'll hear from me next Friday to do the Law of One, talking about the Law of One on my podcast. This has been Orion Rising. I am your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into the show. I'll see you guys later. I love you guys. Have a great night.